have everyone introduce themselves. I'll have Amanda go first. Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Amanda Diulis. I'm the Senior Program Manager for She Should Run. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that encourages women to consider running for public office. So we sort of do the encouragement to get women to at least consider the possibility of getting their name on a ballot. So I think we're going to hear from a lot of great folks today. And the work that we sort of focus on is like the work before the work. And so the work at She Should Run, we provide free resources that empower and encourage women to consider running for public office. Right now, what we're excited about is our Ask Her Anything program, which is around mentorship for women, asking any and all questions they have to women who have run, won, or lost, and our election webinar series. The first one is going to be coming up in April. So that's what we're excited about.
Cool, thank you. Go ahead.
I'm Lisa Sulaco. I'm a former Colorado Springs council member, former Colorado Springs Board of Directors for utility company. I have been a past legislative intern. I've attended several candidate schools, and I have run as a Republican candidate for state representative.
Scoot over so your lighting's better because the sun's cutting you out. So sad.
Okay. Are we good now?
Yep.
Okay, Metal. My name is Ayana Quinones. I am currently at UCCS, the University of Colorado Springs, literally up the street. I currently serve as their Speaker of the Senate, and I also fill a few other roles, but that one's most permanent. I am hoping that maybe one day you'll see my name on the ballot. One day. So, yeah, that's me.
Thank you. And I am kind of out of the screen. We keep shifting. Yeah. So I am, the organizer and moderator of these discussions, but I'm also actually running for United States House of Representatives in our district. I'm not really going to get too much into it because I kind of want to focus on some of the other speakers, but this topic is relevant to me as well. So I want to ask. So, I was surprised because about 2 weeks ago, so I'm on social media, and I had a few, there are bullies in our lives, especially in politics, there are bullies. And, I haven't had a lot of bullies in my campaign, thankfully. I think just because of how I navigate how I navigate social media, but there were a few bullies who said, women aren't for politics. Politics are only for white males. And I was just shocked at that because I knew people think that still, but I was just shocked that it came so close. So I'm just kind of curious if any of you have, dealt with any of that yourselves, in any of your capacities, and, what's your mindset? What's your approach to it? What has your experience been? Does anyone want to jump in?
I can. Okay. So I'm sorry you had that experience, and I'm also sorry to tell you, get ready, okay? Because it's not just a reflection on running for elected office, but we're actually just in this cultural time period of a lack of accountability on social medias and almost this verbatim cruelty from individuals, and politics particularly gets hit with a lot of that. And what you first said is, I'm going to simply say that we women, we make up 50% of the population, and it is vitally important for women to be involved in politics because it reflects our perspectives and our experiences, and it puts focus on policies that, to be honest, most men involved in a political position would not look at. So my personal opinion is that it's extremely important that we have female representation and being involved in the political experience.
Go ahead. Or did you want to speak, or did you not have something to say?
I was gonna wait to see if Amanda had anything.
Oh, do you want to say anything, Amanda?
Yeah, I would love to. I think that it's such a common issue, unfortunately. But I think what we've seen success with is leaning on the community around you. I think with online trolls and bullies, they're meant to make you feel isolated and also deter you from doing this work. I think it's critical to ground yourself as to like why this is important. We know that it's a really uphill battle when it comes to running for office. But it's like, how are you working on, building up resiliency, but also how are you leaning on the community around you and what are you doing to build that community? So I think it feels inevitable, which is sad, but it feels like there are also ways to combat that, that don't include just yourself. I think what we as women do really well is find community, and that's a strength of ours, especially when running for office.
I think for myself, what I've found a lot is all of those traits, all of those characteristics that people view as weak. I have been told that I'm too soft. I've been told that I'm too soppy. I've been told that I'm a little bit too emotional. I don't think I am, but anyways, I think learning that that's not a bad thing whatsoever. And even just like going through like sometimes you have to bend the rules a little bit to make sure that people are heard, to make sure that people feel like you are not just timing them and trying to get them out, like get the microphone out of their hands, right? And I've learned that those things, those moments where I was told I was too soft a few years ago, that is so helpful. And to just learning how to be kind and realizing, yes, people will always have something to say about it, but as long as you are confident in your ability to carry yourself, which is not easy, half the time you're faking it, but really holding on to that and not letting it go, I think is something that is really powerful.
So before I know how to kind of ask future questions, I'm kind of curious, as a UCCS senator, what do you do? Just so I know how to even ask.
I prepared this. So UCCS has shared governance. So there's 3 bodies that govern the school. There's faculty, there's staff, and then there's students. So as a senator, my job is to advocate on behalf of students. So if they say we want, I don't know, free parking, it hasn't happened. Our job is to try to make sure that what students need, we're kind of like the liaison between administration, staff, and faculty.
Okay, just curious about that. So, when we talk about women in politics, I personally, I try not to be overly identified as a woman in politics just because I want to represent all people. And I think most of us will probably relate with that. We have, well, I don't want to assume, but, we have women specific issues that we focus on. But I'm kind of curious, what in specific as a woman do you bring to the table in your work and what you're trying to do? Because obviously we have male constituents and males that we have to represent, but what do you bring as a woman that assists what you're trying to do, if that makes sense? And Amanda, if you want, you can tell us how you guys approach that She Should Run, when you're speaking with the people that you teach.
Yeah, 100%. I think, last year we focused on an approach that was rooted in issues. So identifying like what are 5 issues that are impacting women the most in this country at this time. And it was climate change, reproductive justice, and gun violence. It was the economy, and it was racism. And so what we found is sort of like all of these issues sort of intertwine with one another. And also like the most important part are issues that are affecting women impact everyone. So it's not just a women's issue, it is a societal issue that we have to focus on. So when we frame it like that, it's not just like, rah, rah, let's get more women into office just because. It's just, it is because there is a significant reason behind that. We have an opportunity to better our society. And if it's through the lens of gender equality, I think that's also okay because I think what are women's issues are our country's issues.
Hey, Kelly, are you listening to us right now? Okay, maybe not. Well, I have a video clip that I'd like to play actually because I think that would really segue well. So let me find it here. Screen share. Is it too loud?
No, I'm trying to.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Katrina, are you ready to share a video?
Yeah, the women's history video.
Oh, okay.
For more on the influx of women in politics globally, my colleague Junwei Sum spoke with Susanna Welford. She's an executive director of Running Start, which is an organization dedicated to educating young women about the importance of politics while giving them the tools to achieve greater political power. Beyond equal representation, she explains the other benefits of having women in politics.
I think in the past, the way that women worked to get more equal representation was they used the argument that it's fair. So women are over 50% of the population, and so of course we should be in power, we should be running things. And I think that argument only gets us so far, because I think that the bottom line is, well, so what would be the effect? Does it really matter to have women in politics? And my favorite, actually, statistic comes from the business world instead, where they show that if you add women to the highest levels of corporate America, if you add them to boards, if you add them to the leadership in companies, that those companies actually make more money. And that's such a beautiful example of, we need the diversity of women. We need the different ways that women think. We need their leadership styles. We need their different problem-solving skills, because we're missing that right now. Because right now, the leadership of our country, whether it's in business or politics or practically any field, it tends to be monolithic. We have generally older white men. And study after study.
Well, I guess that blocked out. She was just saying, study after study shows that, the more diverse perspectives that you bring into situations, whether it's in politics, but in that clip, she was talking about the business world, but the more diverse perspectives you bring to the table, the more successful you actually are, because, you know how to, you know how to tackle all the issues from a 360-degree angle. So, so we'll continue. What do you bring to the table as what experience as a woman, or what just in general, what do you think you bring to the table as a woman in politics and government?
So, two things. As a former representative on city council, where it's considered nonpartisan, so the representative is not affiliated with one of the parties, and the whole intention is for fair representation of your constituency. And that was something that I'm a mother of 4 daughters, and I became involved and decided to run for office as a stay-at-home mom. I'm educated, I have a master's degree, I began a second one, but I was so passionate about some of the policies that I was seeing that was being enacted within the city. I was a little disappointed in the perspectives of some of the former council members that had been coming. And I also was trying to teach my daughters about the importance of role models and representation. And so that does go to all of that, where it's vitally important for like the women in the audience to be able to look and feel that there's some legitimacy with representation on an issue. Because of me being a fellow woman, I'm going to understand some of the reproductive rights, their sexuality surrounding women, and other issues, families. Women politicians tend to bring forward policies that focus on families and children and education and healthcare. It's just historically, those are the ones that we look at because of our broader sense of looking at issues. So we all have characteristics that we women bring, softness, but also toughness. There's a lot of tough women in politics. And so Again, 50% of the population, so we really do need to fight to maintain representation and role modeling.
When I think about what I bring to the table, I bring to the table all the women that have come before me, raised me, nurtured me, and all the women that currently surround me. So when I look at anything, I think the one thing I realized within the last week or two, really, this last month has been weird, was learning how much I can learn from people I do not agree with. So I was talking to some guys, and one of them told me, I really don't care about anybody else's perspectives because mine is the only one that matters. I was like, that's fascinating. Tell me more. Anyways, like, that's absolutely. Tell me more. And because this was in response to me saying, I think we need panic buttons on campus just in case somebody doesn't have a phone and something is happening. What then? Because the cameras aren't going to catch everything. If something were to happen, this came up because I was walking a freshman to her car. And she was like, yeah, sometimes I don't feel safe. And I was like, that's very important, right? And then that person said that. And honestly, it's kind of like working through a little bit of an imminent critique where you're like picking apart their own logic in front of them and they're like, oh, dang it, that is illogical, right? But working through things that I don't understand, don't care about, and don't agree with, I learned so much. And I think that is one thing that you kind of have to constantly do as a woman is you're confronted with stuff that does not serve you whatsoever. You have to kind of sit there and pick it apart. But I think that's one of the great things that comes with it. It's not great, but it's something that's very helpful.
Yes, I had a really good question and then it just, unfortunately, that's too bad. But while I'm remembering that, do either of you have questions for the other panelists? Because I know sometimes, do you have any questions?
I do. What caused y'all, like, what was the moment that got you here? Like into politics, my bad, I got stuck.
Politics.
Oh, I think my mom might know. Well, for me, it was like a really low moment, actually. I think a lot of my lowest moments brought me to this moment. And, I don't have a background in politics. My background is, I grew up writing poetry and, being a humanitarian, loving the earth. I was involved with lots of eco-village projects, gardening projects. I want to solve some of our plastics crisis. Honestly, a long time I've been waiting for a politician or, elected officials to start talking about some of the things that I want to hear about. Like I want to hear about politicians, combating our plastics pollution crisis. I don't hear any other candidates talking about it. I don't hear many, elected officials talking about it. I want more gardens to be organic. No one talks about that, and it's really it's basically the bottom line is it got to the point where it's like, I cannot wait anymore. Things that I've been waiting since college, it's like 15 years later and there's no politicians out there talking about the things that I want to see happen, and now I'm running as an official, as a candidate, and there still aren't candidates talking about it, and there still aren't elected officials talking about it. So really it comes down to the point where it's like, I've been waiting for 15 to 20 years and no one has stepped up and done it. So it's basically like, okay, I forget who says it, but we're the ones that we're waiting for, and that's basically what it had to come down to. It's like, okay, well, no one's talking about it, so I guess I have to go talk about it. And I think this whole process really is about changing the narrative. I think that's what this whole political process is, and even us women coming together and talking about issues that are important to us, it's about changing the narrative. Because if we don't start talking about it, the status quo is just going to be maintained. So that's, I actually have a really specific situation that brought me to this point, but I'll keep that out. It's pretty gnarly.
intriguing.
Yeah, I have lots of those.
You're going to get asked that question a lot.
No, yeah.
So just prepare.
Yeah.
So in 2009, again, I was a stay-at-home mother. I had the fortunate chance to be at home raising 4 little girls, and a neighborhood issue came up for me. And I have always been very involved in neighborhood avocation, having 4 children in the school systems here in Colorado Springs. I was a active PTO, junior achievement. I went and became a substitute teacher, and then I got my license in counseling here in Colorado. And there was an issue that came up that I was trying to get a hold of my, at the time, a council member, and he was not returning emails, phone calls, and I was getting so frustrated because I was raised to really believe that representation is solely for being the voice of the people, that we really have to fight like heck to keep our voice in our government. And so one of the things that has even grown with me, because now, I was in my 40s and now I'm turning 54, that we need good representation more than ever. And also citizens need to remember to get involved, fight, and that we really have a great responsibility of the representatives that we're choosing for us. So I did want to say something and ask Amanda if you don't mind, because with us all being women, sometimes it's the women out there that are hardest on female candidates. And I learned that 10 years ago I learned that, this current cycle while I'm running for state representative. So I'd like to know, in your experience, or also, I don't want to change the question, but just because you had mentioned that before,
I
but
like having
okay.
this open.
but again, of reminding people that once you get into an elected position, you really still do have quite an obligation to be accountable to your constituency. That does not go away. We do have a lot of ineffective elected officials that almost forget that immediately. But I'd like to see what your experience is with other women supporting women officials in their capacity and the community that you're talking about, because I still, me being involved in this one, I still am not seeing that as much as I'd like to. Like, every woman in this audience, please support your female candidates. Please get to know them. It really is important for women like myself when we're running to feel that community.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is I think those feelings are very valid. And I think that we are a part of a society that was built by men and for men. And so if there are women who are maybe acting against their own interests or their own gender's interests, I think that there are things in place that have happened over the years that sort of provide some context and like coloring to this issue. So yes, there are women who are sort of acting against women candidates. But what I've also seen in this work is that there's a whole generation of women who have run for office and women who are in elected office who are looking to build the bench after them. So it doesn't stop with just them. It's sort of, they're all in this program that we're sort of launching soon. Every candidate we've asked, for the most part, has said, like, yes, I'm so excited to be a part of this program and like usher in the next generation of leaders. I'm happy to share my knowledge. I'm happy to sit down and have like 3, 5, 10 conversations over the next month with women. And so I think that's part of being a candidate. It's like, we can't think about just ourselves in this process. I think we have to think about like what's motivating us, and then also what do we want the next generation of leaders to look like, and what are sort of the steps that we can put in place to help us usher in that next generation. So whether it's mentoring or being able to share your experience with others, storytelling is a huge part of things that I think women are also very good at, and help to contextualize the experience for other women to make it more accessible to them. And also what I will say is that we see a lot of women who we ask them, would you ever run for office? They're like, I would never run for office. But then we hear they're like, this is such an important issue to me. And so we say, well, you can have a huge role in this too. Like it takes on average, I think, a woman, it's like 7 asks to get them to seriously consider doing something. And then even then, I think on average, based on our research, it's like it takes 4 years for a woman to make that decision, to come to that decision. And so the more people that you can encourage in your own time, whether casually or you're taking stock of like who's in your network, and seriously having that conversation and saying, I think that you have this, and this quality. I think you would make a great leader. I think it's something that you should consider seriously. And just being supportive to other women candidates. I think like women who aren't ready to get involved politically, or at least like putting their name on a ballot, like there's opportunities to support women candidates, whether it's volunteering at a campaign, getting to know the political landscape. But then there's this huge gap that I will say where we're not supporting women who are actively in office. And so it hurts the sustainability of our movement when there aren't programs or there aren't support systems or there aren't networks where women candidates like feel supported mentally, emotionally, and sometimes physically, unfortunately. So there's a lot of work that's being done. There's still a lot of more work to be done also.
Yeah, there were a few things mentioned that I think are really important to, reaffirm. One, the aspect of, well, first off, like I said earlier, us women even having the right to vote is still relatively new, historically. And us women being involved in politics is still relatively new. And so even if you're not running as a candidate, in order to keep this freedom alive and these rights alive, you do have to get involved in some way. I mean, you don't have to, but that kind of carries the torch forward and keeps it alive, like they said, because, if you let something die, like the 4th of July, we celebrate the 4th of July, so we never forget how we gained our freedoms as a country. I mean, I don't really know how effective it is, but, that's why we celebrate it. So, if you want to keep our rights as women alive in office, in politics, get involved in some way, and what Lisa said is really important too. I think for me, this is important generally, not even just for women, is get to know your candidates because, you can see someone's website, you can see what they put out there, but until you interact with them and until you have an opportunity to really not test them necessarily, but get to know them on a deeper level, you don't know who you're sending to office and who is going to be representing you on some of these really important issues, because say you have a sick kid, you don't want to just pick anyone off the street to help them. You want to make sure, this is, your child is sick, you want to make sure your best family member's there to, if you're not going to be there. So that, I hope that made sense. Get to know your candidates, reach out to them, get involved. So another thing I wanted to say is about 5 or 6 years ago, I actually was on the She Should Run website. So they have this like module where I was thinking about running for mayor in a town that I lived in. And so I was exploring their resources and it was really fun, but I never ended up running for mayor, but it was fun to connect with other women and, they have little modules that you complete, and, at that time I was like, I don't think this politics stuff is for me, but 5, 6 years later we're here. And so anyway, but yeah, if anyone's interested in, even just putting your toe in the water, I really recommend visiting their website. It's really cool. And at the end of the panel, I'll have Amanda explain some more. But did you want to answer the question that you asked the panel?
Please.
Why did
why
did you decide to run for a leadership position?
Let's see. Okay. I was like 17. I was fresh faced, like straight out of high school. I was a COVID kid. I was a COVID kid. I graduated out of high school in 2021. I could barely drive. I shouldn't have driven. I don't know how I got my license. Let's see. I was in my sociology 1000 class. I just switched my major. I didn't know what sociology was. So I switched my major because I was just like, I don't want to do education anymore because education is on fire. I don't want to be paid in craisins and praise. Let's switch my degree up. And then I realized very quickly that I loved education. Kids are cool, but I did not really care about teaching arithmetic. And that I was more so like, okay, but what the heck is going on with our schools? What's going on with our schools? Why am I seeing like that achievement gap? Like I did like a little bit of stuff in the classroom, and I could see this in person. I could see girls like me. I could see people like me falling further and further and further behind. I had this one student, and she constantly gave me hugs. It was constant. She would literally attach to my leg and would not let go. And one day I asked her straight up, and then she told me, my parents are always working. I don't have anybody else to like go hug at home. You're the only person who talks to me, really. And I was like, oh, okay. So if you see, the thing is that that's indicative of something much larger. Yes, it was one little girl who saw me and was just like, oh, she looks like me, and she talks like me, and she talks like my mom. But it was something so much larger. And then once I got into sociology, it was really just reaffirming what I already knew, but it just gave new big words to it. So it's like, oh, that's interesting. And I was on a hike with a friend, and then he was like, I'm running for student government, and I'm into sustainability stuff, da-da-da-da-da. I don't know anything from sustainability. He does. And then I was like, that sounds really interesting. Just let's talk about it. And we did. And then I realized I was so sick and tired of waiting for people to talk about stuff that I care about. And then I was like, why not? Let's just do it. So one day, when I was like a little baby, I was like, my voice is important enough to be heard in this moment. So I put the application in 2 days late. I put it in 2 days late, and they still accepted me, and now I'm on my 3rd year.
So, Amanda, do you have any questions for any of us, by the way?
Oh, I did have a question and I lost it. Let me think about it and I'll come back to it.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. If anyone in the audience ever has a question, just, alert me. But so I follow Lisa on Facebook. That's how I found her. I don't know her very well, but I was intrigued by something you posted about women's property rights. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay. I'm curious if you'll take the opportunity to talk about that, because I thought that, I think it's really interesting and it's specific to women. So do you feel comfortable?
Yes, I am,
talking about it?
absolutely. And it's specific to residents here in El Paso County. So one of the things is, unfortunately, after 20-something plus years of marriage, I went through a very tumultuous divorce. And so, like a lot of families here in El Paso County, I found myself in our family court systems. And one of the other things too that when I ran, 13 years ago, and then why I chose to run again for this year in this position was, I think it's lost on the importance of how important legislation is, that words matter, and how much it affects our everyday lives. So if any of you are in the audience, if you're a homeowner, I had a situation and I became aware of that members of our judiciary here in El Paso County in family law are abusing their power and doing quick claim deeds and removing people off of their property deeds. And I am a firm believer in property rights. And so I became aware, not only through my own personal experience, but then that also started having me look more at judicial laws and the lack of accountability with members of our judiciary. So if you're a voter, a judge will first express interest up at the Capitol, and then the governor appoints them, and then they're on the bench for a couple of years, and then they come up for retainment. Well, the lack of information on members of our judiciary is purposefully kept very minimal. And so you either have to do quite a bit of research, and even then it's difficult to find out about who is on our benches. And so when I found out, not only because of what happened to me personally, and then found out that quite a bit of females here in El Paso County who were finding themselves in a domestic relations case and having their property rights removed. And it wasn't exclusive to me. I've had tons and tons of citizens come up. So I became very vocal in the last 5 years about that removal of property rights and certain members of the judiciary. And I'm proud to say that a lot of my campaigning, that one of the judges that I allege should not be privileged to be a member of the judiciary has just resigned as of last week. And so that does also get back to, again, of regular citizens. I'm not in an elected office. You do not need to be in a position to make your voices heard. And it goes back again to the whole purpose of representation, but we've got a lot of work to do. And that's why too is where we're talking a lot about national issues right now in Washington and then even at the state level. It does trickle down. So there are tons of things that, as an everyday citizen, I'm passionate about this. You've got to start paying attention to what's going on at a local level, policies that are being made at, utility companies, your municipal legislative body, and then up at the state, because, I hope none of you find yourself in front of a judge, but I can guarantee probably somebody in this room has. And so an impartial and fair judiciary is a cornerstone of freedom and justice. And so we've got a real problem, in my opinion, here in our community. And so I just would encourage all of you to pay attention and please don't vote anybody in for any position that has that much of an effect on your everyday life if you are not familiar with them or their stances or their history of voting. This particular member of the judiciary has a real problem with women. And since this is Women's History Month and we're talking about, I love women. I'm a mother of 4 daughters, and I have a problem with other females that target, especially women, because we still are a vulnerable population. We really are. So, so thank you again for asking that.
Well, I was really interested in that because not only during domestic disputes if you're a homeowner, yes, property rights, I don't know much about that because I'm not a homeowner, but I was very interested in that because I know that even in domestic disputes where you don't own property, many women go homeless if they have, domestic violence or something. And so, men would not necessarily understand this. And it's just kind of a touchy topic, but, I'm a survivor of domestic stuff. And so I understand, and I have actually been homeless too. So I understand homelessness issues as well. And so, it's just interesting to know. It's like, it doesn't really matter where you are. Even if you're a homeowner, you can be not necessarily homeless, but kind of homeless, propertyless, just due to a dispute with not only your partner, but then the judiciary. And we're going to have to team up sometime just talk because about 2 weeks ago, I was on a virtual Colorado town hall on Twitter. They have this new thing called Assemble X. And a man in Denver talked to me, and he is a judicial reform activist here in Colorado. And so we're going to team up sometime and talk about it. And so I'll invite you so we can talk about it, since it sounds like this is an important topic for you as well. So,
and I do want to just mention that as of 2023, the recent numbers, homelessness affects the elderly and women the most now.
The elderly thing, that is just horrible. Homelessness is one of my big issues on my campaign, just because I know about it personally. But with in some of these most of the homeless shelters, they aren't equipped to help the elderly. They're not medically trained, if someone has Alzheimer's or something. So we have, like you said, we have some big problems that we have to face. We have to tackle them, and we need people who understand them, or, at least care about them, and not just like, oh, these are just bums or something. Now this is kind of veering off, but we'll round up because we only have a few minutes left. But, some of these issues are a lot more nuanced than the mainstream narrative would have you believe, like homelessness. It's like, I was homeless and I've never had a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction. I don't have any major mental health issues. I'm a hard worker. all of those things are out the window, so we really have to look at these in a more nuanced way and in a more experienced way. And I think that I can't speak for every woman, but it seems like women are at least more willing to understand the issues. And of course, we do have some homelessness issues that are extreme, like extreme addiction issues and mental health stuff, but that's not the whole story, unfortunately. So we have about 2 minutes, so I'll let everyone round up, kind of closing remarks. And, if you have a website you want people to visit, or, I told both of you could bring materials if you want to hand out or anything, but go ahead.
Yeah,
Well, I just want to say thank you so much again for inviting me to participate in this very important topic of conversation. And for all of you out there and anyone listening, again, is female representation in politics it's imperative. It's something that we all need to support. But also, if you are not that person that feels comfortable, then there certainly are other ways you can get involved and you can support candidates that are able to step forward. And then again, I want to reiterate, your voice is so important. And again, whatever issue is important to you, please use that voice. Either approach your elected representative now, use social media to talk about it, get involved with groups, but you do not have to be in a recognized elected position to even influence policymaking. That's what's so great about it, that people need to remember the power of the people in their government. So thank you so much.
I had stuff and then I left it at home. That's 8 miles away, so I'm not gonna go get it. So I just want to thank you all for coming out today. I know it's like a weird Sunday afternoon, and I just really appreciate it. Kind of bouncing off what you were saying, if it's important to you, it's going to be important to so many others. And you don't have to be like an elected official for the most part. And on the things that I really harp on, I'm not. I just pull up over and over and over and over and over again. And I think that's something that's really important, because yes, there's representatives, but then all the people that they represent too have a voice. So I think that's just something really important. And if y'all want to connect, I'll be here until like 2:30. So
Did you each give your websites or contact?
did you bring any flyers?
I have a website, www.electlisac.com.
Do you have a website?
I don't.
That's okay.
Just go to UCCS.
Just type. I'm gonna. If you want my name is a doozy. So.
Just spell it.
Yeah. So my website is KAT number 4 house, and I actually have some materials that I can give you, so it's easier .com. So cat4house.com. So Amanda, do you want to round out and kind of tell people how they can find you and how they can get involved with your website if they're kind of interested in exploring a candidacy?
Totally. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I think I'd just round out by saying it sounds like we have such a wide, diverse experience on this panel. And so I think the thing that I would walk away with is that there's no one path to elected leadership and ways to get involved. And so we have this saying at She Should Run, it's a little corny, but it's if you care, you're qualified. And I believe that wholeheartedly. I think that if you're interested, if you're involved, if you want to get involved, you have every right to, and you have a lot of opportunities and tools to do so as well. And so if you're interested in just dipping your toe into the water, checking it out, no obligation to put your name on a ballot tomorrow. Our website is sheshouldrun.org. If you are interested specifically in speaking to me and finding out like, where should I start? My email is amanda@sheshouldrun.org.
Okay, thank you so much. So we are going to take a 15-minute break, and in between the break, I'll have a video playing. Our next panel is going to be a pretty sensitive topic, and our last, so I'm going to be playing a video compilation during our break. And the last video is a little bit sensitive, just FYI, but I think everyone here saw the schedule, so they know what we're talking about. So thank you, Amanda, and Kelly, if you're there, if you can play the break 1, or I can do a screen share.
Okay, I'm here. Actually, the woman sitting right next to you, can you repeat your website?
electlisac.com.
Okay, great. Okay, so Kat, we have the videos they all just say Women's History Month. So I'm assuming you mean just the next one in line.
Let's see.
Here. There's not really a preview, like
The second one.
the second one. Okay.
Yep.
Here
Thank
we
you.
go. Yep.
So we'll be back in 15. There's food up here, chips and salsa, pizza, help yourself. There's plastic cups. There's a fountain drink machine 2 doors down, and there's iced tea up here. So we'll be back.
March is Women's History Month. It's a time we set aside to honor women's contributions in science, business, sports, social movements, and so many other fields. For centuries in America, women's contributions in these fields were often overlooked. As a result, they were omitted from history. That's why we celebrate Women's History Month and the opportunity it gives us all to get a more complete picture of our American history. It's important that we use times like this to teach new generations about those women we all know, like Rosa Parks, whose refusal to surrender her seat to a white passenger on a bus helped launch the effort to end racial segregation in America. Like Susan B. Anthony, an abolitionist who became one of the leading figures in the movement to gain the right to vote for women. And like Claire Booth Luce, the first American woman appointed to a major ambassador post. This month also gives us an opportunity to learn about those women whose names we don't know as well. Like Alice Ball, an African-American chemist who in the early 20th century developed the first successful treatment for leprosy, a debilitating disease that once left its victims ostracized from society. And like journalist Nellie Bly, who posed as a mental patient in 1887 to go undercover in a women's mental asylum in New York City to expose the terrible conditions patients were subjected to. Her report led to lasting institutional reforms in mental health care. And like chemist Stephanie Kwolek, who in 1965 created a lightweight and durable new fiber that later became Kevlar, which is used to create bulletproof vests and helmets that protect the lives of our law enforcement and military. Women have invented new medicines, fought as heroes on our battlefields, and enforced the laws in our communities. They led in the effort to end slavery. They have created businesses and built hospitals, and they fought to secure their own right to vote. Women have played pivotal roles in building this country. The United States wouldn't be the economic superpower and the world's beacon of liberty without their contributions. On the home front, on the war front, and in the workplace, women have served and shaped our great nation. That's why Women's History Month is such an important opportunity for us to pause and honor their profound contributions. As we recognize them, let's also honor the everyday women who make our families, communities, economy, military, and nation so strong. The Heritage Foundation is deeply proud to honor them all, not only during Women's History Month, but indeed every day of the year.
Malala, you have such an inspiring story and such a passion for girls' education. Talk a little bit about where your interest in learning came from.
Basically, I'm from Pakistan, and there's a beautiful valley called Swat. And in Swat, I was going to school. It was part of my normal life, and I was interested in education, but did not know why is it important for me. But then soon in 2007 and until 2009, some terrorists attacked Swat, and they were called the Taliban, and they stopped girls from going to school. They blasted more than 400 schools at that time, and they were totally against women's rights. And we were in a situation of war and conflict. At that time, I realized that these people, the terrorists, they are afraid of the power of education, and they do not want women to be powerful. That's why they are stopping education. And I realized that I should do a campaign, and I should stand up for my right of education. And because studying books and learning, it seemed a crime to them, but for me it was something which was my dream. Education and learning and going to school was my dream.
And you're so brave. I mean, Taliban came and they shot you in the head, and yet you still came back right up and are still advocating even more so now for girls' education. I mean, Why are you not intimidated by these people?
It was always my dream to work for the education of every child. And when I was shot, I think the Taliban did a very big mistake, because right on that day, on the 9th of October 2012, all the weaknesses, fear, and everything which was discouraging me died on that day. And new strength and power and courage was born for me. And I felt really strong. And that's why I said that no one can stop me. And the whole world prayed for me. And I saw so many cards and letters which people sent me. And I realized that the whole world is with me, God is with me. And my cause, education, is the real cause. It's a peaceful cause, and it's for the goodness, and it's for the good purpose. So that's why I am being supported by many people.
Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood? I remember my childhood being somewhat difficult. Kids at my school used to always make fun of me since I couldn't speak English very well, so I didn't really have that many friends for a while. I always felt like the odd duck out, looking for acceptance. I used to feel like I was all alone, like an astronaut traveling around the universe in solitude. I felt dumb and stupid, and I felt I could never be successful. I constantly felt people were watching me, just waiting for me to fail. Then I realized I need to stop letting what other people might think of me dictate my feelings and start focusing on what I think of myself. And how did you do that?
Body rub parlors, salon de massage érotique, rub and tugs, wellness centers.
Il y a plusieurs façons de les nommer.
But they all do the same thing. They exploit women.
We're going to tell you 7 myths you've heard about body rub parlors.
And then we're going to tell you the truth.
Myth number 1. Body rub parlors are a safe alternative to street work.
我需要隐藏制止的年，我觉得不安全。
I was hit, spit on, choked, kicked, beaten. The owner called it his stable. After hours, he'd send us out to parties, stags, to his own friends, wherever he could make money.
Il y avait beaucoup de drogue. Tu peux pas faire 14 clients par jour en restant sobre.
J'ai été menacée par un client, j'ai donc arrêté le service avant la fin. Le propriétaire m'a donné une amende.
Myth number 2, body rubs help to empower women.
The owner would say, everyone to room 7. We'd line up for a new client, then he'd pick one of us.
I was girl number 2. The owners hire us based on looks. They make you get naked for the interview.
Les propriétaires avaient du pouvoir. Les clients avaient du pouvoir. J'étais impuissante.
A man buying a woman for sex isn't equality, it's power over women.
Personne veut que son enfant travaille dans un salon de massage érotique.
Myth number 3, men need sex. Where else are they going to get it?
L'idée qu'un homme puisse acheter une femme pour du sexe, c'est ça le problème.
It reinforces the sexualized power of men. It's patriarchy.
When body rubs are licensed, it treats male demand for sex as an inevitable reality. It's not.
Puisque l'exploitation sexuelle résulte de la demande, éliminer la demande met fin à l'exploitation.
Myth number 4, proper regulation, oversight, and security measures will make it safer for women.
J'ai été exploitée sexuellement, psychologiquement. Comment comptez-vous régler ça?
It's inherently violent and degrading. How do you make that safer?
我被性剥削。
Owners are just wanting to make more money by exploiting more and more women. They'll do whatever it takes.
Myth number 5, body rub parlors and wellness centers provide economic opportunity and choice for women. They can leave whenever they want.
发牌制度帮助老板监视我、控制我。
They threaten to smear your reputation if you try to leave their place. They'll tell other places that you have an STI, anything to make you stay.
I was forced to work overtime. I got in trouble or even beaten up if my nails weren't right or makeup wasn't right, and even if I wasn't wearing the right clothes.
La plupart des femmes en sortiraient si elles le pouvaient.
感觉就像没有出路一样。
Quelle autre option s'offrait à moi? Qu'est-ce que j'allais mettre sur mon CV?
Myth number 6, licensing body rub parlors and wellness centers reduces organized crime.
Le trafic humain, le trafic sexuel, la drogue, j'ai tout vu.
我是以学生签证带到来的。
Ça fait juste partie du monde de l'exploitation.
Myth number 7, these are legitimate businesses owned by legitimate business people.
It wasn't a massage parlor. It was a brothel. The owner was my pimp.
Donner des permis à tes propriétaires de salons de massage, c'est permettre le proxénétisme.
He was my pimp. Better owners are not a solution. They're just in it for the money.
The city makes money off it. Doesn't that make them a pimp?
Cities and lawmakers are facing a big challenge. The proliferation of body rub parlors and wellness centers is a complex issue. We understand that. And we agree that women currently working in these establishments need to be safe. But here's the truth. Men buying women for sex is not equality. It is not empowerment. It is inherently violent, dehumanizing, and degrading. And so it is inherently unsafe. No amount of oversight will change that core reality. When a city licenses these establishments, they become complicit in the sexual exploitation of women. They're licensing prostitution. This increases the demand for paid sex. It encourages exploiters to capitalize on vulnerable people. We can't just stop at making current conditions safer for women working in body rub parlors. Our vision needs to be greater. It needs to be a future where women being bought and sold for sex is no longer accepted. Here is the question we need to be asking. Should we be helping exploiters get rich, or should we be helping women transition out and progressively shut down these havens of sexual exploitation?
What you decide will impact the lives and safety of thousands of women.
So we implore you,
Be on the right side of history.
Don't be a willing partner in the exploitation of women.
Help lead us towards a future that is free from sexual exploitation.
Okay, we're about to start our second panel here pretty soon. Just waiting for this video thing to stop. Some of the tech is kind of funky. So, let me see the title. Let me get my device. We're just a little bit over. Okay. All right, so we're starting our second panel now. This will be kind of a sensitive topic, but it's something it's an important topic that we need to discuss as women. It's about some of the exploitative issues that we have faced as women, and that is mostly specifically sexually, So, Kelly, go ahead and bring on our other panelists. Hey, Andrea. Hey, Jill. So before we get started, I'll have all of our panelists introduce themselves and kind of give us a background of how they're relevant to this conversation. So we'll start with our local panelists.
Hi, my name is Mary Bottle. I was born and raised in 5 different Amish settlements. In 2004, when I escaped, I reported the abuse I experienced. There were 5 people in my immediate family arrested and prosecuted for sexual abuse of a child. I published a book in 2022 that talks about some of my experiences growing up Amish as a child. And after that, part of my story is told in a docuseries called Sins of the Amish. You can watch it on Peacock. However, in 2021, I founded an organization called the Misfit Amish. What we do at the Misfit Amish is we have a mission to provide resources and education to Amish and for Plain people to combat crimes in their communities and bridge the cultural gaps between Amish and Plain communities and the English world, as we would say.
Okay, go ahead, Andrea.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Just want to start with some appreciation for Katrina for hosting this wonderful event, and really happy to be here with everyone on this panel. My name is Andrea Hines. I am a commercial sexual exploitation activist who spent 7 years in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada's licensed and regulated commercial sex industry, selling sex out of brothels and escort so-called services for over 4,300 men in that time. I've been out now for 11 years and working hard on this issue, trying to combat sex work ideology. And just came out with a book where all profits are going to charity, exit demand work, all those types of things. So have a free e-copy that Katrina will give away. And just happy to be here to further the conversation. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Jill, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jill Martin. I'm a sex trafficking survivor. I was trafficked in South Florida for about 4 years. And now I'm out and I help my community in Palm Beach County. I help run a outreach to women out on the streets. They're in street prostitution, providing resources and trying to build relationships and trying to help them exit the life. And also I help run a John School, the John School PBC. That's a program for buyers and sellers that are arrested, and I speak locally. And I also am working with Palm Beach County, the Palm Beach County commissioner to work on stricter regulations in Palm Beach County for strip clubs.
Okay, thank you, Jill. So to preface this conversation, I've been exploring the concept of crime and the concept of what, as a society, we deem as acceptable. So as a society, we have agreed that, for example, murder is wrong, theft is wrong. For the most part, people who take extremely hardcore drugs and become, dangerous to their society is wrong. And yet, pornography and legalized prostitution is a thing that is sadly, we're kind of in this battle right now, but there are several states in the country who are kind of pushing it forward. And you have to, this is my premise. I think that the selling and the buying of sexual organs should be considered wrong, but since we have devalued women historically, we have allowed it to continue. That's kind of my argument. And, no one really has to agree with me, but that's something that I'm developing. And so we're going to kind of explore some of, some issues that go on, not only on the end of, if someone's raped or trafficked, that's really out of their control because that's kind of forced onto them. But then we have to look also, people who go into sex work, supposedly it's their choice, but how as a society have we made it an option? Like, oh, this is a valid, career choice. I don't know anybody who would want their daughter to say, when I grow up, I want to, be a porn star, and again, not everyone's going to agree with me, but, this is, we're arguing, I don't know Mary very well, but, we're arguing that this is harmful for society and it's harmful for women. So, before we started, I played a video during our break, but we were all too busy talking, so I don't think anyone heard anything that happened. But it was basically, they were testimonies of women from the sex industry, and they were explaining how harmful it is. And, I thought it was a video, and I shared with someone the other day, and she said, how did they end up there? She was kind of blaming them, like they're the ones who put them in that situation. So Andrea is, out of this panel, she's the only one who, she put herself into the industry. So I would just like to know, what brought you to the industry and then what took you out of it?
Well, yeah, where to start with that? It can start for many of us going back to childhood. In many situations, the women who end up in these, above board, licensed and regulated brothels that are state sanctioned, many of them are survivors of prior trauma or prior abuse of some capacity. So that could be, again, going back into childhood. For me, it wasn't so much. I did have a very good family and upbringing, very middle class. But my first exposure to sexuality was at a very young age when I was 3 years old at a daycare, and a boy repeatedly exposed himself to me and would at times ask me to touch his penis. And he was a little bit older than me, probably about 6 or 7 years old, and I was 3. So this was one of my very first memories. And I think that when those things happen in these formative years, it's very scary for children, and also tends to kind of take away that veil of innocence, whereas then they experience a lot more of these, sad realities of life without having those protectionary mechanisms to safeguard them. So after that age, I became very, very aware of sex, and media played a huge role in that, to the point that when I was young, I actually did aspire to become a stripper. So like, I appreciate what you said, Katrina, where you're like, I don't think, people want to end up in this, but and I agree, it's not authentic usually that they do want to end up in it, but there is such a loud social messaging that says this is empowering for women. This is women's choice. Like you said, why are they there? They could leave if they wanted to. And people are not understanding these larger systems of this thought control is really what it is. And a lot of it is for profiteering, like you said, off of women's bodies and our reproductive capacity, whether that's prostitution or surrogacy, any of those things. So for me personally, before I entered the industry, I had, experienced those childhood moments of the impressionable messaging that was coming my way, but also experiencing 7 years of a string of very abusive relationships with young men in my early teens and later teens until I was 19, well, until I was 22, actually, till I entered the industry. So a lot of that really affects our self-worth and our self-esteem. And then here is this industry that tells you you're beautiful, you're worth so much more money than you're going to make working at this conventional job. And, this is everything that you've ever wanted, and you will be in control. You will have the power. And it's all a smoke and mirror show, really, at the end of the day. And it's to dupe women into believing that what is actually harmful for us is somehow liberating and freeing. So that was my journey, and which I think is a very common journey nowadays. In addition to what we see with trafficking and third-party exploitation, obviously.
Well, before I ask some of the other panelists questions, what was the point that you were like, okay, this is not what it's all cracked up to be, I want to leave?
Again,
and why women in the industries that are still experiencing some of the abuse or like the awful experiences, why are they staying? What was the straw on the camel's back for you?
I think why women stay is, again, a mixture of things, but particularly economics, right? If you're being paid hundreds of dollars an hour to do something versus $20 to $30 an hour to do something else, usually we will try to maximize our time and our earning potential. And so once you get, kind of accustomed to making that income, it's very hard to adjust your lifestyle to go back to earning real world wages. And so I think that that's a trap that keeps a lot of women there longer than they would want to be there, when those straws on the back eventually build up so much that they start to realize, this is not beneficial for me, this is harmful for me, actually in reality. So for me, I was in prostitution for 7 years, and it took me till about year 5, I want to say, until I started to unravel all of that messaging and starting to really find who I was at my core and what I actually believed and what resonated with me that I read and absorbed through social messaging and media and literature, all those things. So it was really also seeing the women, my fellow women, and seeing them suffer and recognizing that they were suffering, and then having that experience mirrored back to me where I could see that I too was suffering, alongside them, and that I had been dissociating, and I was unaware that I had been doing those things to protect my mental health, my emotional well-being. So, it was really just, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And then it's everywhere around you, because harm is so inherent to this industry that even if after you see it, you try to tell yourself, oh, that was a one-off, you will then see it repeatedly. It will be that mere exposure effect of just seeing it all the time, to the point that you can no longer deny it any further.
Thank you. So if you didn't catch on, Mary here, she grew up in Amish communities where she experienced a lot of sexual abuse in the Amish communities. And I'm kind of curious, we spoke on the phone the other day, and you said something really that I thought was interesting, is that some of the abuse starts almost in the language. And do you remember? And I'm wondering if you can explain about that, and if you have any way to tie that into just the secular world, the non-religious communities, where do we find that language kind of lays the foundation for sexual exploitation to happen?
Absolutely. So in 2021, I co-wrote a research study. In 2021, I co-wrote a research study on child sexual abuse within Amish, Mennonites, Anabaptists, and other religious communities. Some of the responses were disheartening, but also telling, because part of what you do when you control language, if people don't have language to communicate what they're experiencing, it doesn't exist. It's not a problem because it doesn't happen. So if we don't have words for our vagina in our language, because I am English as a second language and Pennsylvania Dutch is my primary language, and we don't have words for vagina, how can we appropriately communicate that our vagina is in pain or we're having X, Y, and Z? So we have to have language to actually talk about what we're experiencing. In our research study, what we asked our participants was, were you taught that child sexual abuse was a sin? And if they said yes, we further asked a question, what was it called? The results of that include wrong, fornication, lust, defrauding a child, tempting, sin, improper behavior, stumbling, moral failure. Some people even said they didn't have any language to talk about it. So when we go and we seek support and resources to escape the abuse that we're experiencing, how can we access support and resources if we can't communicate to the people in places and positions, the advocates, the investigators, the detectives, the justice system? If we can't communicate what we're experiencing, how can we access support?
Was that so? Those were specific to religious communities, you said?
Religious communities.
Okay. So, and Jill, tell us a little bit about what your trafficking experiences actually were, or you don't have to get too in depth, but just kind of so we understand where you're coming from.
Sure. Just briefly. When I was about 22, 23, I met an older man. He was like 16 years older than me at the time. I was in the music scene, and that's how I met him. And it was, first of all, and it started as a boyfriend girlfriend relationship, and then eventually it became abusive, and then he trafficked me. So a lot of people still have this image in their head. Like this week, I went and spoke with Palm Beach County about changing some laws and licensing laws with Palm Beach County, because in Palm Beach County, you have to have a license to be an adult entertainment in the strip clubs. So when I went to the meeting, they all had this image of what sex trafficking was. Like they saw Sound of Freedom, that's what they thought sex trafficking was. So when I went to tell them, my story a little bit, they were like, "Oh, you're a survivor? Like, how does this happen in Palm Beach County?" And a lot of women who are trafficked, like, they end up being, it's like Romeo pimps. So they boyfriend in, and then they'll put you out doing something. So for me, it took him quite a few months to get me out into a brothel. So he pretty much put me out into a brothel. It was a lot of abuse and I had no self-esteem. And I had a lot of father issues. And to me, he was kind of a father figure and was really fulfilling that role that I really needed at that time. And a lot of women are pimped through that Romeo boyfriend situation.
Well,
and I think
I was going to explain to people who don't know what trafficking is. It's when you are coerced or forced or threatened. So it's not just like, okay, I'm going to do this because I want to. Something is held over your head, that makes it like, okay, I have to do this. So I just wanted to put that out there. So did you want to continue?
Sure. I was just going to say a little bit about like the language. When we hear sex trafficking, a lot of people are kind of confused. Like, what is that? What does that entail? And I think it needs to be just called sex slavery, because that really puts an image of what it is. Because you could have a brothel, and you could have a woman that's sex trafficked, and you could have a woman that's choosing to enter that brothel, and it's just an entry point. What happens in that brothel happens to the woman that's choosing to do it and the woman that's not choosing. And people seem to forget all of that part. So when we're looking at someone who may be forced, yes, that's by a pimp trafficker. There's another trauma in itself with that part. But what's happening to you when you're with the man, that's a whole other trauma in itself, and it's happening to the women that choose to be there. And we need to really look at sex trafficking as just an entry point into the sex industry, because people they're like, okay, it's not, we all can agree that someone who's been trafficked, that's really bad, but the person that's choosing to do that, well, that's their fault, but they're traumatized, that whatever happens to them, it's their fault. And that's just not true.
Yeah, I agree. So, I was going to say something and it totally lost me. But, oh, yeah, I know what I was going to say. So, unfortunately, the statistics show that in, like legalized pornography and, brothels and stuff, a large percentage of the people there are actually being forced. So these somewhat called, these so-called legal establishments, they're actually hiding a lot of, dangerous, we all know that there are dangerous elements, but even if, because, okay, so myself, Andrea, and Jill, we're all on Twitter, and we're kind of, abolition people, and we get hated on a lot by a lot of sex workers. Actually, they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. We're happy here. So, okay, let's say they are happy, but the unfortunate thing is that the industry is really dangerous there's a lot of trafficking and force happening within those industries. So I think that as a society, we need to take that into consideration and look at that, because if you went to a restaurant and you went there multiple times and say you kept getting like bugs in your food or like a dead rat in your food, you would assume, okay, there's something wrong with this establishment. We need to close it down until we figure out how to, and I'm not saying that, when we're talking about the abolition of like pornography and, brothels and whatnot, I don't really want to talk too much about that, but, if it's being kind of a gateway for other illegal activities, that's obviously a problem. Did you want to say anything, by the way, in relation to all of this?
I just have a question.
Yeah.
So my question is, when you're talking about this, it kind of sounds like a similar structure of like high control religious groups. And part of what happens within those groups, you have women enforcers. Is that what I'm hearing correctly? Like you're having women enforcers of the pornography industry?
So you're saying like people who are for it?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, there are quite a bit of those that we run into. I don't speak solely on this topic on social media, so I'm not really, I don't get a lot of the pushback, but Andrea and Jill, they get quite a bit of haters, I guess you would say. So yeah, so let's talk about that actually. So Andrea or Jill, you can hop in. What would you say? What has your response been, or what has the response been to your work trying to end this work, or bring more awareness around it?
I guess a lot of hate online. So, I try not to get in it too much with someone that's in the life, because I was there too. When I had exited and left, I was very pro-sex work. I would have been out in the streets advocating for safer workplaces for women myself. And it wasn't until I went through therapy and really unraveled all of that and realized what I went through was abuse, and that I was trafficked, because I didn't even know I was trafficked until I went into therapy. So I think, for me, I try not to get into it too much with them. And so that's just kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah, I would echo what Jill said. I think that especially when you're experiential in some way, whether trafficked or not, I think we all have to start at a place of compassion for those that are still active in that world, and realize that many times they are being fed, messaging that is of ill intent and is meant to condition them. Just like Mary said, it's like a cult. It actually is. There's a lot of thought reform that occurs. And it's loading the language. It's telling people like it's us versus them. It's creating these like alliances. And really what we need to look at is the alliance of women together. That should be our first and foremost alliance. And then we can kind of pick apart everything else. But if we are attacking one another on this issue, obviously we're not having constructive conversations. And, really we are re-triggering those women because we're holding a mirror up to them. And some of them are not at that place where they can emotionally handle that. But we do want to plant seeds, and we have to go about that very delicately to, honor those people and understand that they are victims of sexual exploitation.
Yeah, so I found this about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I thought it was a really compelling piece of information. So prostitutes are almost 10 times more likely to be killed than soldiers in combat. There's literally no category of work with a homicide rate as high as prostitution. This should tip us off that this is not work, but in fact a form of socially sanctioned violence. And this is not a panel trying to hate on people who are.
One of the things that disturbed my conscience with regard.
Sorry. Let me get back to where we were. Okay, so this panel is not about trying to hate on people in the sex industry. It's talking about some of these darker aspects, and then we need to ask, like I said earlier, my premise is, we've allowed this to happen, whereas we've made strong stances against other problematic forces in society. And again, my argument is we've allowed it to continue because historically we have devalued women. And I'm just kind of curious if if the panelists would agree with that. What are your thoughts on that? Because I just don't understand why we, like that quote said, 10 times more likely to be killed than soldiers in combat. That's pretty intense, yet this is still so prevalent. Pornography is a thing, and legal sex work is a thing, so why have we allowed it to continue? Did you have something to say? Okay, I didn't know if you were grabbing the mic or not. Yeah.
Well, so one of the things that happens is when you control education, you control people. And also, when you legalize something that is harmful to people, you oppress an entire group of people. And the people who suffer the most are going to be the most marginalized within people. And when you consider the historic oppression of women in this country, it's only been a little over 50 years that we can have a bank account without a man on it. As a matter of fact, when I escaped in 2004, I didn't know that I could have a bank account without a man's name on it. Because I grew up in America that was a whole different America than the America you grew up in. In my world, women and children were viewed as property. We were meant to work. We were meant to be plain. We were meant to be Amish. And our goal was to grow up and be a good Amish wife. Cook, clean, sew, bake, garden. And you know what else we were supposed to do? We were supposed to be silent and submissive. And when you continue doing that, part of what you're doing is you're upholding the oppression of the most marginalized within that community. The people who live with disabilities, the people who are different, the people who don't fit in the mold. There's no place for anybody outside of the assigned gender roles to be a practicing Amish person in good standing with the church. We have to comply with the expected norms. So we get crucified, and people sit here and they glamorize that and they romanticize that, and the language they use to describe it. Often, some people even publish research that actually legitimizes the patriarchal oppression of Amish women. They even go so far as to say that Amish people are not in the practice of employing abstract or critical thinking or even self-critiquing or self-reflecting. Even though we all know that that's wrong. You can't take a group of people and overgeneralize like that and think that it is helping them. It is not helping to sit there and legitimize the very systemic systems of oppression that have enabled abuse to thrive.
So, Andrea or Jill, did you want to talk about the aspect of, the devaluing of women and why this has continued to, the sex stuff continues?
Yeah, I just again want to echo Mary's comments. I want to read a book by you, Mary, because you're just hitting it right on the head, like all these points, and I think what's so powerful with the Amish community is it really shows the larger issues within society, our relations, male-female, in like on steroids, so when people can see those things, they're like, okay, this is clearly wrong. But then we take it kind of down a level to what we see in society, which is really this facade of equality, right? On the surface, we have things that say, okay, women are equal, we have voting rights now, we've given you those things, but really we still exist in many ways as accessories to men's lives. We're seen that way, right? We are first and foremost wives or mothers. We're not really seen as individuals and equals in our own right. So I think that that really plays into this notion of women as lesser than and women as property. But, really, I like to, reference and turn to the Indigenous culture on this topic, because I think here in Canada, especially, they have done a really, really good job on pushing for what we would call the reclaiming of the sacred role of women within society. So, we had a national inquiry into the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls of Canada. And their interim report, which came out, I believe, in 2017, is called Women and Girls Are Sacred. That's the actual title of the report. And I think that was, for many people, the first time that we actually started hearing that that paradigm shift happening that is saying, women are not accessories. We are sacred in our own right as life givers and as, brilliant thinkers and people who are capable of doing wonderful things in society to, heal us all and help us all. So I think that we really have to always go back to what Indigenous cultures are telling us, and that is that we must reinstate that sacred role of women if we want to see anything happen in any capacity: sex trafficking, exploitation, cult ideologies, domestic violence, any of these issues. They all root back to how we are viewing women at that starting point in society.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, I mean, you guys hit everything, but just, changing minds, changing hearts. And for me, like, I believe until prostitution is completely eradicated, women will never we will never be equal. We will never have those rights. And I think it's about, for me, and how I try to combat this issue is for me to work with my community to try and eradicate prostitution in my state, in my county and state. So that's like where I am with that.
Yeah, so Jill and I were on a brainstorm panel about 2 months ago about, what problem solving can we do to kind of help people in these situations. And Jill works with an amazing organization. Jill, can you kind of tell us about the organization? But what I specifically think is important to communicate is, how are you supporting women to exit? Like, what is it that they need to leave? And do you have any success stories?
Yeah. So Lighthouse Palm Beach County, basically, we started an outreach to women out on the streets. We're doing it twice a week now. But before we came up with the outreach, obviously we have to have resources in place, because you can't be outreaching to someone and then if somebody says, I want to leave now, you have to have a place to go, shelter, food, all the resources, everything that they need, because they're not going to leave, their pimp when he's keeping a roof over their head. So we have to, that's one of the most important things that we had to have. So we do. We have a 30-day detox program that they can go to. We have housing. We have a safe house that's in Tampa that they can go to. And then there's a program that they can go to after the safe house, like transitional housing. And we also have resources. Sorry, I should say we have resources. Education, if they want to go to college after they've been through the program. So everything is set up for that. We really want a safe house in Palm Beach County. Like, that's one of our goals right now. And that's pretty much what you have to have in place. You have to have these resources. And how we've done that is we've connected with the community. So it's really about community and getting together and being able to provide these resources. Even within the outreach, for example, when we outreach, we go to laundromats and we do their laundry. We give them snacks, refreshments, and toiletries. So even just providing, for example, maybe a gift card to McDonald's, that is something that someone may need at that particular moment. And it's really about meeting the women where they are. And they're not going to want to get out the first time you meet them. And it takes weeks and months and even years. We've been doing this for 2 years now. We do have somebody that is completing the 90-day detox, which is great. So once they get out, we have housing that's available for them once they get out. And that program is, I believe, a 9-month transitional program. So once they've completed that, we'll have resources for whatever they need once they've completed the 9 months. So it's kind of like what we're doing right now, and we're trying to start another outreach, which will be targeting strip clubs, because that's just a huge issue around here, and there's a lot of trafficking that's going in and out of the strip clubs in Palm Beach County.
So it sounds like you're very connected within the community, like different organizations and whatnot. Are they happy to be, helping you guys out?
Oh yeah, I mean, we even work with like a dermatologist. Like if a survivor, and this is also another thing, survivors that have been out of the life, we just don't work with women that have been trafficked. Even if the woman isn't being trafficked, we're still going to help them get out of the life. So that's really any woman that's in the life, we're going to help. So we even have a dermatologist that will work with survivors. So there's so many things that women need once they're out of the life, and they've been out, say, 10 years. Because I've had, I think, 4 women I've known that have been out the life. One of them had been out of the life 10 years and commit suicide. The suicide rates are high. It's just the trauma is deep. We need community. So like survivor community is really a big thing. With Lighthouse, we have a group of survivors that meet like every month, just get together, talk, because we understand each other. It's something that it's such a difficult, it's really difficult for people to understand unless you've been in the industry.
I understand. Thank you for sharing. So unfortunately, we're about 6 minutes away from ending. I mean, 45 minutes goes by fast when we're talking about these topics. So, we're going to do a giveaway. So Andrea and Mary both have books and so I have a physical copy of a book here, and then Andrea's going to give away an ebook. So I'm going to pass around. If you want to be drawn, just draw a number and just pass it around. But I wanted to play something really quick because this is not really, it's relevant to the conversation, but it is a little bit out of our, out of the panelists. Okay, and so this first video, the speaker, he's a little bit controversial in society, and by playing this, I'm not agreeing with the fact that women shouldn't be on the front lines, but what he has to say is relevant, actually. And so I just want to preface this by saying that, and then after that, there's another little video clip. So I will play this one.
Women on the front lines is that there's always the possibility that you'll fall into the hands of the enemy. And it wasn't very much fun for, let's say, British and American prisoners of war in Nazi camps in World War II, although there were some Geneva Convention arrangements that were still in place. But I can't imagine what it would be like to be a frontline woman who fell into enemy hands. That's a level of absolute bloody catastrophic hell that we should be very, very cautious about exposing anyone to. So I have a proclivity to think that women are differentially susceptible to exploitation on the captured enemy front. And I don't know exactly, maybe you can ask people to face their death. I don't know if it's okay to ask them to face endless gang rape and then death.
So this is pretty relevant right now just because we have wars going on around the world, but this is something that we don't really think about during wars, is the amount of rape that happens and sexual violence that happens in, international conflicts. And that it's very sad. It's something that we don't talk about enough, but if you look at these numbers, I mean, obviously this is an issue and I've read stories. And so if there's one more reason to be anti-war, it's this, So, I am not shy about being very pro-peace and, pro-negotiation as a candidate. So I just wanted to, kind of throw that in there. So it sounds like, let me get back to our people here. So did everyone get a number that want to be pulled? So, okay, so before we choose the winners, so I think what I am taking away from this panel is we really have to change the narrative of what women are. We have to really start, it's not going to just happen. We have to change the narrative in society. And I think, we've come a long way, but we need, like Andrea was saying in her, she went to an event where, they're having a change of narrative where she is, where they're adopting the indigenous stance that women are sacred, So, this is a hard topic. This is something that, it's not going to be solved overnight, but I guess, the first thing that we can do is to start investing in women and girls and start changing the narrative of, what they are capable of and what they are, and that doesn't mean just educating women, it means educating, boys, young boys. And, it's, this was more kind of, an informative panel, but, obviously we're not going to solve any problems with this one conversation, but hopefully it has opened some doors for some of you just to, consider some of these topics and, think about some of the statistics you saw in some of the testimonies. And, this will not change in society. Some of these things won't change in society unless we take an active role. And it doesn't, you don't have to be an activist about it, but, you can at least be active in your own lives, in your personal communities. So I want to thank the panelists, but Andrea, so I had 28 numbers, but I don't think we have, I don't know if, 28 were taken. So pick a number between 1 and 28, and we may have to, pick a few before we get someone.
Okay, my favorite number, and I don't know why, is 14. So if anyone
Does anyone have 14? Oh, okay. So can you hand that to her and then just write down your name and email address so you'll get her book, and then you pick a number between 1 and 28, but that's not 14.
Not 14.
Yeah.
Let's go 19.
Anyone have 19? No?
One more. One more. We'll go 20.
20? Okay. All right. So you get a book here. So there you go. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. Well, I want to thank all the panelists. And if you want to say a website or something, feel free. We're like 1 minute over, so just make it speedy.
Thank you so much for this opportunity and having this panel. My website is www.themisfitouters.com.
Andrea, Jill?
Thank you again. Short and sweet conversation, but super important. The information for our book is whenmenbuysex.ca. And the only place that you can probably find me, unfortunately, is on Twitter at my last name, Hines, and then Sight, SIGHT 2020, Hindsight 2020.
Okay, you can find me on Twitter at Rescued by Faith, and the organization I'm with is lighthousepbc.org.
Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you later. Bye. All right, so we're going to take another 15-minute break, and then when we come back at 3 o'clock, we'll be talking about women in law enforcement, and we'll continue then. So again, there's food up here, chips and salsa, drinks, and just help yourself. There's a bathroom in the back. You have to ask the people at the front for the code, but we'll see you in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, do you want me to just play this next video?
Actually, I'm just gonna screen share.
Okay.
Because I didn't upload the correct one. So, oops. It's right there. Oh yeah.
Now to one of the most memorable Americans ever to confront the issue of racial segregation head-on in this country, 40 years ago. Rosa Parks, even refusing to give up her seat on a city bus to a white man, became the mother superior of the civil rights movement. This week, at the age of 82, she's traveling this country with a group of students. Her story and what she is telling them in her own words.
I remember well these struggles. This plan very active. It's really stronger to continue the struggle for freedom.
So we'll get that to you by tomorrow.
Took as I got on the bus.
How goes it?
Two white people boarded the bus.
Is everything
And
okay?
one man was left standing, and I certainly did not
Katrina.
stand up, and didn't consider myself breaking a law because I was in what was supposed to be our part of the bus. So my arrest brought about tests from the people of my government that lasted 381 days. When we did go back on the bus, the Supreme Court had handed down a decision that there would be no more racial segregation in transportation. When I was on the bus the time I was arrested, the only thing that was on my mind was that I did not want to be treated in that way.
It took her sitting down to get a people to stand up. And we can never, ever, ever forget her for that. That happened to Rosa Parks in 1955. Just one more reminder that the happy-go-lucky 50s were not at all what they seem to be in the rose-colored glasses of our memories.
I've always taken the view that women should not imitate men, and that, whatever part of women is inside yourself, you should let it develop and prosper and express itself. One of the things that does happen in corporations see the benefit, right? Different balance. It was Voltaire, the French philosopher, who used to say, if a banker jumps out of the window, follow him, there is money to be made. If you look at those companies that really focus on women at the moment, many of them are bankers. So it's bound to be economically and financially rewarding, which should be an encouragement to all companies to actually go in that direction.
So back to that urgency, the financial crisis was obviously a backdrop for your 10 years finance minister for your beginning of the tenure here, and it goes on. What would have been different if there were more women in senior citizen?
When I say that the crisis might have been avoided, or certainly would have been different if there had been more Lehman sisters than only Lehman brothers, I think that women tend to have an acute sense of risks. Where are the risks? How can they be assessed? How can they be anticipated? How can they be prevented? I'm cautious about overgeneralizing, but I think it's a fact that is now more and more empirically demonstrated that the risk-taking profile of a woman is different from that of a man. And in that sense, I think that the crisis would have been different.
With that backdrop, what will change if women rule the world? What would the world look like? How would it be different?
My hope is that it would be better balanced, because the group will be better balanced itself. My hope is that there would be more focus and concern about education and health that generally come as priorities for women more than for men. My hope is that there will be more peace because we bear children. And I think the thought of taking them to war is something that is more frightening to mothers than to fathers for some strange reason. My hope is that we will be more inclusive because we've been excluded for a long time.
We all know that Julie invented the light bulb. We kind of remember the lads that built the first plane. And you certainly recognize the name of the gentleman who invented the phone. But can you name one inventor that was a female? Frowning and worrying, I see. Well, frown and worry no more. We have the top 10 inventions that the ladies deserve the credit for. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let's take a trip through history and discover the stories behind 10 amazing inventions. Don't forget to click subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future awards. Number 10. We start off the list with the ultimate social lubricant, beer. Beer was invented nearly 7,000 years ago by the Sumerians. Although we don't have an exact date or the name of the inventor, we do know that the first batch of beer brewers were women. It could be a great icebreaker the next time you're at the bar. So, you have invented beer? Number 9. And number 9 is the flat bottom paper bag. What? Flat bottom paper bag needs inventing? And second, what even is a flat bottom paper bag? Well, here it is. Before this, there was this. As you can see, the old version paper bags were more like envelopes and were very inefficient. It carried less and took more paper to make. A lady by the name of Margaret Knight came along in 1867 and invented the process of making the paper bag that we know today. Her innovations revolutionized the paper bag industry by replacing the work of 30 people with one machine. Number 8. When Mary Henderson came to New York in 1903, she noticed how drivers that were on the roadster needed to constantly lean out of the car and manually wipe their windscreens. While this may have been a great way to get some exercise while driving, it was also a quick way to get yourself killed. So Miss Henderson set her mind to inventing what we now know as the windscreen wiper. She patented the invention and presented it to the motor industry, but she was turned down as people didn't believe there was a future for a device. It wasn't until 20 years later that the first car with window wipers that used Mary's basic design came on the market, and the rest is history. Number 7. Josephine Katrina was rich. In fact, she was so rich that the biggest annoyance was the fact that her china was being damaged every time her workers washed it. But Josephine wasn't going to leave me, except sometimes things just get broken. She was going to invent a machine that would automatically wash her dishes without anyone touching it. So in 1886, with the help of a mechanic, she created the first successful automatic dishwasher. Her invention not only had separate compartments for different things, but also used pressurized jets of soap water to do the cleaning. Number 6. Camelot is a word familiar to online gamers. It's that thing that stops your character from dying 5 seconds into a first-person shooter. But in the real world, apart from being the key material for manufacturing bulletproof vests, Camelot is also deployed widely in many other areas. It is 5 times stronger than steel, yet also 5 times lighter. It was invented in 1965 by a chemist called Stephen Pollock, was researching the applications of liquid crystalline polymers. Number 5. In a world of inventors, there aren't many nicknames that can match the Sun Queen in terms of elegance and power. This is the nickname the scientific community has given to Maria Telx, one of the inventors of solar power. Telx is considered one of the founders of solar thermal storage systems, and she was a prolific inventor of practical thermal devices. Number 4. Before caller ID was invented, picking up the phone felt like opening a box of chocolates. But a lady called Shirley Ann Jackson decided to take away the fun of guessing and give us the choice to not pick up at all. Please leave a message after the tone. Shirley Ann Jackson was behind the invention of call ID in the 1970s. She was also the first African-American woman to receive a doctorate from MIT. She was a brilliant physicist, and research also led to the invention of fax machines and solar cells. Number 3. Ada Lovelace was a mathematical genius. She was so ahead of her time that she invented what is widely considered to be the first computer program. 80 years before the first modern computer was even built. She had written an algorithm for a computing machine called the analytic machine in her notebook in the mid-1800s. By a wide margin, she was truly the first ever computer programmer. Number 2. Grace Hopper was not only a real admiral of the US Navy, she was also an unsung hero in history computing. She helped to invent the first compiler, or to put it in simple terms, the first computer program that could translate word instructions into code for computers to read. If that's not enough for you, she also coined the term bug, as she literally discovered a real bug causing problems inside her computers. Number one, Heather Laval was a Hollywood star in the 1940s, so perhaps it goes without saying that she was beautiful and talented. However, fans who knew her only from the silver screen may not have guessed that she was also a brilliant inventor. The most famous invention is frequency hopping, a way of jumping around in radio frequencies in order to avoid a third-party jamming. Although initially intended for military use, frequency hopping was crucial to the development of Wi-Fi computing. The groundbreaking inventor also got a little star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, not many people can match that. So, that was a long list of amazing inventions, and I suppose you're unlikely to remember them all. Don't worry. If you take just one thing from this, I hope it's that ladies can just be as good as that in terms of inventions. The long list.
It's been 100 years since women were promised the right to vote. That milestone came when the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified in August of 1920. But that promise of the right to vote, for many, that promise went unfulfilled for decades, even after the 19th Amendment. One thing to know right off the bat, the familiar shorthand that the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote, let's scratch that. Who gave women anything? This was a real struggle. It was a fight. It was a long, bitter, agonizing fight. And nothing was given. It took George Washington 6 years to rectify men's freedom by law. But it took 72 years to establish women's rights by law. That fight wasn't just about sex. It was also deeply entwined with
Okay, we're going to be heading into our next panel now. Go ahead, come on up, Lindsay. Hi, thank you. All right, we're starting our next panel now, which is about women in law enforcement. Let me get this. So so we're basically going to be talking about women in law enforcement. You know, the numbers are really low, and honestly, well, I can't speak for Lindsay, but so we have a guest 30 by 30 initiative. I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute, but we're making the argument that, you know, the low rates of women in law enforcement actually poses a threat to public safety. And so we'll talk a bit about that and just learn more about, you know, an actual woman in law enforcement, what her experience is. So everyone introduce yourselves, and then 30 by 30 wants to do a short presentation before we get into the discussion. So.
Hello, thank you for having me here. My name is Lindsay Kaiser. I've been in law enforcement since 2015. I started at a police department in Adams County, and I currently am at a local sheriff's office. My entirety of my career has been on patrol, so I'm in uniform, I'm out responding to calls for service, and actively acting. If you think the image of a police officer, that's the job that I've had since 2015. Definitely a little bit of a crossroads in my career, but definitely looking to see how to continue in advancing my career and staying in law enforcement.
Go ahead, Tanya or Rita.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya Meisen. Can you hear me?
Just to let you know, we're doing this at a cafe and wine bar, and we just had a ton of people come in unrelated to the event. So if you hear chattering in the background, that's why. Sorry. But the sound is loud enough that hopefully, you know, we can hear you. So go ahead and introduce yourselves. And after you introduce yourselves personally, you can talk more about 30 by 30 and go into your presentation.
Sure. So I'm Tanya Meisenholder. I'm the Director of Gender Equity at the New York University Policing Project, where I oversee the 30 by 30 initiative to advance women in policing. Prior to that, I spent nearly 20 years in the New York City Police Department and served as the Deputy Commissioner of Equity and Inclusion.
Hi, I'm Rita Gonzalez. I also work at the Policing Project, and I work with Tanya doing 30 by 30 work. I guess a little bit about myself. I'm a social worker, and I have a lot of experience mainly just doing research and that kind of stuff. And then I got really interested in doing 30 by 30 work. So I'm excited to meet all of you guys.
So Tanya, do you have, so is Tanya or Rita going to do the presentation?
Well, we're both going to join in, but we're having a little difficulty sharing the screen for some reason.
Okay,
So
Kelly, can you help them with that?
There we go.
Okay, so go ahead and I'll let you take the stage.
Okay, great. Thanks. So what is 30 by 30? 30 by 30 is a coalition of people that came together several years ago, police leaders, researchers, criminal justice, and public safety professionals. And it is built primarily for sworn police officers. Our organizational home is the Policing Project at New York University School of Law. And we partner with several other entities and organizations in policing, specifically those that focus on women, including the National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives, the Police Executive Research Forum, National Police Institute. I won't read the whole list. You can see that, but that's our organizational home and partnership. And what are we about? Basically, we're looking to remove the bias from policing assessments and policies. And that includes hiring standards and whatever sort of barriers they might face in the agency. In addition to that, we're concerned with ensuring that women's specific needs are met in the agency. Second is to transform agency culture to support and celebrate the diverse and underrepresented officers. And our ultimate goal is to increase the number of women police recruits nationally to 30% by 2030. What we are not about, and we put this slide in here because it's come up several times. We're not about tokenism or favoritism. We're not asking for women to have special treatment. We are also not about stereotyping, and we're not about lowering standards. Our point is to ensure that the standards set are valid and appropriate for law enforcement, not that women necessarily should have different standards. We're also not about removing men from policing. Sometimes folks will ask us about that. And we're not about only engaging women. We know that in order to make change in policing, especially around women in policing, that we need everyone to do that. Rita?
Yeah, so I think just something to be important about 30 by 30 is a lot of what our focus on is not only just focusing on having women in law enforcement, but also selecting people who are actually going to be the best people for the job. So a lot of what our focus on is not only to have more women in law enforcement, but just making it so that to find the best police officer in general. So of course it is, about, we want the percentage of women in law enforcement. We want to have representation, but in general, our focus is just to have policing as just improvement overall. So our slide here is just talking about having more policing just in general as something that can overcome, that women can overcome those hurdles. So policing is, inherently a difficult job, and it's something that that is difficult for everyone to be a police officer in general. But I think that what we're trying to do is, overall create ways to be more women as police officers, and then just make women have, more access to be police officers. We want to have more female police officers and have them just comfortable instead of the way traditionally it is typically for just having male officers. So why 30 by 30? Right now, according to the statistics, we currently have 13% of sworn officers, and there are only about 3% of women in leadership roles. So this is something that we definitely want to encourage, to have more women in leadership roles. A lot of what we've learned in just our research in general and talking to a lot of people in, especially women who are also in policing, is that a lot of those women have been trying to be in leadership roles, and they've been like the first people to be in leadership roles. And it's been hard to see a man in a leadership role and try for the first time to be a woman in a leadership role. And we've heard that from various people, from people we've worked with in 30 by 30, from people in different cities. So it is like a common theme that we've been seeing. And just a lot of the research that we've done has proven exactly what we see. So we do our own research at the Policing Project for 30 by 30, and we've written, we've published different types of research, and here there's a bunch of different ways that show how women are better officers. So here we can see that they use less force, they use less excessive force, they end up using their discretion to make fewer arrests for nonviolent and low-level offenses. You can see that they have better outcomes for crime victims, and especially for sexual assault victims. Women have much better outcomes because of that. And they also conduct fewer searches and traffic stops. They're more likely to find contraband. They are perceived as more honest and compassionate. And something that we're also working on is comparing not just women in law enforcement, but also people who are women who are just generally doing better, in business as women. So we're really kind of looking at that sort of research. They also are they pop up less often as in complaints and in lawsuits. And as you can see here, it says that their service weapon is less often in the line of duty. So these are just a few examples, but obviously we still also are producing different types of research that prove that women are also very good in law enforcement.
Thanks, Rita.
Yeah.
So just to wrap up what 30 by 30 is, we have the vision, we have a plan, and we have the momentum. Something got a little wacky on this slide. Apologies. So we have almost close to 400 agencies that have signed up, and they range from small to rural agencies. And then we have a number of partnerships across the country with professional organizations, private industry, as well as the Department of Justice. And that is 30 by 30 in a nutshell. And here is our contact information.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. So this is an interesting topic. Kelly, can you take off the screen share now? Thank you. Thank you so much. So, this is just a laid back conversation, and we're just going to take it where it needs to go. But I'm kind of curious, how long have you been in law enforcement, Lindsay?
I started my law enforcement career in 2015.
Okay. So I just wanted that for my own understanding. So I know that there's mixed, right now, at least in society, there are mixed perspectives on law enforcement in general. It's like some people are, they're kind of like defund the police types, and other people are, back the blue types. I personally, I've been in quite a few hairy situations, and, I relied on my police and, to help me out. And I had generally a very good experience. And one experience that I really remember that sticks out in my mind is I had kind of a hard situation with my stepdad. And, there were a few times that the cops needed to be called. And I remember one time a woman cop came, And I don't know, I have a really good memory of that. And, you know, of my whole life, I only remember speaking to one woman law enforcement, you know, and she made a difference. You know, she legitimately made a difference. And, you know, I'm just kind of curious, you know, why don't we see more women in law enforcement? So I'm kind of curious, Lindsay, you know, how has this process been? Before you got into law enforcement, being in law enforcement. I mean, has it been very difficult, or you know, has this been kind of a breeze? You know, what are your perspectives, and why do you think that more women are, you know, pursuing these careers?
It's definitely one of the careers that, I mean, any careers like that, we have definitely, you know, peaks and valleys. Getting in 2015 was kind of one of those dreams of, I'm going to make this happen. And that was riding a high for quite a couple of years, starting out my career as, you know, my first job on patrol and learning how to do the job. And I had a very unique experience at the police department that I was at. I was very fortunate just with the working environment and the dynamic and the way that we were supervised and how it was constantly striving to do better. So each call for service that we went on, I felt I learned from. And those are some of the biggest lessons I've learned and still carry with me to this day. And then just over time, that became a valley in the sense of personal situations changed and certain dynamics of the department changed, and had to make a decision to move what we call lateraling to another department. So going through the hiring process at another department, and have had a bit of a journey through that, culminating in right now. So I have a son, he just turned 3, and that has been a unique journey having a child as a female in law enforcement and having to come back to working the road and dealing with being postpartum and physical changes and all of those things that you think you can be prepared for it, but what it really comes down to is your department environment that has a big impact on that. We can maybe get into that a little bit further. So I want to address your question about why are there not more women. I really think it comes down to a lack of education or an understanding of what it takes to even get into law enforcement. When I started the journey of trying to make this decision, I worked in the restaurant industry for 10 years. And when I woke up one morning, I was like, I think I want to be a cop. I don't know how to do that. And so I just had to do a bunch of research and digging and what really primarily was going on to governmentjobs.com and pulling up job postings and reading through what does it even take to go through a hiring process? What are the physical requirements? Because I think that that's one of those daunting things that we as women hear. I don't know if I can do the physical job. Well, if you understand what it is, then you can learn if you as an individual can overcome that and achieve it. And so I think that it's the lack of education out there about what that would actually entail for each individual person, and where to get those answers. And then the resources of knowing if I needed to understand that or wanted to speak with someone to get that advice. So I don't think there's a network or an understanding of we as women where we can get that. I think men understand that because it has obviously for decades and decades was primarily a male driven industry. And so it's about knowing where if we as women want to get into that world, what would it take?
So I have more questions for you, but I'm kind of curious with 30 by 30, do the physical requirements come up as a barrier? I'm curious. And then when they respond, I'm kind of curious, you know, your experiences with the physical requirements. So go ahead, either of you.
Yeah, and I think she was spot on with many of the reasons that women don't join. Part of it is lack of awareness, part of it is lack of representation, but specifically about the physical fitness standards, part of the reason that 30 by 30 started is our co-founder was a former chief in Newark, and she had noticed that women were not passing the physical fitness standards to get into the academy at the same rate as men. And that was because the state had changed the timing of the test. So she did a lot of work to really try and understand why was it that women weren't passing the physical fitness. And she put together a weekend training where she herself went to the park on the weekends and she brought women together and worked with them so that they could pass the physical fitness. And then the other thing I would add is there are no standards in the United States for physical fitness standards. So every agency, every state, you know, does it differently in terms of what the standards are, and most of them are not validated. So I do think in terms of entry that physical fitness standards are problematic. And as I mentioned in the PowerPoint, we don't advocate for lowering the standards. We advocate for right sizing them and making sure they're appropriate for the job.
Did you want to talk about some of the physical aspects?
So for me, it also became a part of not just what it would take to get through a hiring process and understanding that, but also understanding what are my physical limitations as a woman doing this job, and knowing where I can educate myself to get into the physical condition that I wanted to be in, to feel prepared that I could defend myself and take care of myself as well. And that was a journey I had to go on my own quite a bit, which for me as an individual was fine because that's who I am as a person. However, through the years, speaking with other women getting into law enforcement and having to sit down and have those conversations about physical fitness and how to go through workouts and how to condition your body so that you're doing it for you as a woman and putting yourself in a position of feeling strong for you and knowing that you're going to go into a situation that you are prepared for because of the physical fitness and training that you've done, coupled with the mental preparation. That is something that, again, over the years I've seen, again, is also lacking, that's not a network or communication that's done at departments as a whole. I've done my best to do that as an individual, but it's definitely a piece that's missing because you can figure out and educate yourself about how to get through that testing, but then it goes into the next step of, well, now I got to do this job. And what do I, as an individual, a woman in a uniform, what do I need to do to feel that if I go to that call for service, that I can take care of myself and others, because that's what's expected of you.
Yeah, so I'm curious about your experience, with your department. I mean, I'm guessing you're one of the only women, or, how many others?
I don't have exact numbers, but I do know, so on patrol, one of my friends and I the other day, because she's also a patrol officer, did the math, and out of 90 to 100 deputies on patrol, there is 7 women.
Okay.
We also are a sheriff's office, so we also run a detention facility. That's the responsibility of the sheriff's office and the county as well. And there's significantly more female deputies downstairs, but actively working on patrol, we are one of 7 out of about 95 actively sworn deputies.
Okay. So I'm kind of curious about culture and, we're not expecting, police departments or, sheriff departments to change. And it's like, oh, this is like a woman's place now. But, what has your experience been like in your department, as a woman? Has it mattered? What has impacted you? We're just I'm curious about that.
Yeah. A lot of people are. Your curiosity is very, very typical. When I tell people I'm a woman in law enforcement, it's very much a little bit of a deer in headlights response, because a lot of people don't know how to speak to us because we're a small niche of society. So initially at my first department, I was at a police department in Adams County. My experience there was exemplary. I felt very, very valued and seen and respected for myself as an individual, as well as the attributes of being a female in law enforcement in that environment. Adams County is a very violent county, and so we had a lot of physical and persons crimes that we had to investigate on a fairly regular basis and a wide gamut. And so knowing the interview techniques that I could bring to a situation, my male counterparts never hesitated to request me to come help if they were having difficulty getting the information that they needed to get. And I think that again is unique to that individual department. And that's again where we have zero control of controlling from department to department, that piece of things. Since coming to the department I'm at now, there has been nothing that's been overt, but it has definitely been a shift in that. However, I noticed there's more often in the back of my mind that question that we as women, when we walk through our day interacting with others, that we're like, was that what I thought that was? Or was that okay? And again, where I'm at right now in my career after having my son and a bit of life transition, I'm starting to speak with other female deputies at my department, and I'm kind of coming to understand that I'm not singular in feeling that. So it really depends on the department you're at and what culture and foundation has been laid for those certain aspects for your day to day.
Well, without getting too deep into politics, I know someone I know a survivor of trafficking in your your county, and she's had specific issues with your department actually. So so I'll probably talk to you later about it, because she didn't come today because I told her that someone from Douglas County is coming, and she's like, "Oh, I'm not going to go." So that's another confirmation for you. That's all I wanted to say. Yeah. So yeah, so so I'm pretty sure that is something that women face too. So 30 by 30. I'm kind of curious. Have you spoken with female law enforcement officers where they're having issues with their department too, where it's like there's a culture of, so would you say it's like the men in your department, or like just the, what specifically, you and your women, associates, what is it that you're finding?
I think it's
in a nutshell.
Yeah.
You don't want to get too.
No, I think it comes down to what your theme of today has been is we as women walking through society, what do we deal with on a daily basis? And I think that's the uniqueness of being in a law enforcement agency. It's because it's paramilitaristic and you have rank and all of those things, it's kind of like a microcosm of that as well. And so it's about learning how to manage yourself and stay true to yourself as a woman while walking through that world. And again, each department is unique to that, and having to manage what that means. I think at my particular department, again, no malintent, no maliciousness, no purposeful thoughts. I want to believe truly, but I think it's more of an inherent nature that some of those cliches that I know, 30 by 30 and other initiatives are working to try to move past is the man's world and bringing women into it. It's, different than hurdles of what women in the military face, is that for so long it's inherently been not necessary. And, each department is on their own journey to try to work through that and be educated while also changing.
So I guess, I want to reframe my question for 30 by 30. How are you approaching these issues where, some of these departments are still very much a man's world, and, in your work of trying to get more women in law enforcement, how are you approaching that and trying to change it?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is being candid about it and spreading the awareness. There's approximately 18,000 police agencies in the United States, and 40% don't have any females at all. And, we've heard from many police departments, many women. We did a nationwide listening tour about the challenges that women face in law enforcement. And it is an institution built by men for men. And I don't say that to be critical, that's history. And it's still very much a male dominated space, and women face, unfortunately, some women face a number of challenges, including sexism, sexual harassment, discriminatory behavior, et cetera. So part of what we are really trying to do is give women a space to have those conversations, to engage with them, to talk about the research that exists, to spread awareness to that, and to push people to change their policies, to focus on these issues, and to make change in their individual agencies. But part of it is being, open and upfront about it.
So, did you want to say something, Rita? Or
yeah, I think like another thing that we do is just spend time working with every agency individually. I think we're not really looking to solve the entire problem all at once, but I think every time we say something and a person finds out about our initiative, the more one person will sign up. And then it's just kind of, one at a time, we get people signing up, and then slowly but surely we'll get somewhere. So I think that's the kind of method we've adopted.
So something I kind of found interesting is that you said that there aren't any general standards for the physical requirements. It's kind of just, is it state to state or county by county? What is it?
Yeah, so there's no nationwide standards. Actually, you're not even required to have physical fitness at the federal level standards for all of the 18,000 approximate. But every state has a post, and in some states they set the physical fitness standards for the entire state. In other cases, it's on an individual level for each police department. And for years, there was and there's been a number of lawsuits around this as well, but a lot of agencies follow what's referred to as the Cooper standards, which is push-ups, sit-ups, the run, etc. But a number of agencies have also moved towards more of an obstacle course type of physical fitness. And then the other thing you have to consider is for some agencies, there's the physical fitness standards to get in and then to graduate from the police academy. And as she mentioned a few minutes ago, agencies also don't reinforce, most agencies don't reinforce the need to maintain physical fitness standards throughout your career. There's not a lot of incentives in many agencies in order to continue to do that. I think sometimes state police is a little bit different, but so there's no nationwide standards that are related to physical fitness. So there's a lot of variation across the United States with respect to that.
Yeah, I found that interesting. Yeah, I just kind of asked just for my own personal interest. But so you had mentioned that, in your first department, you felt valued and, some of your male colleagues were coming to you, if they needed your interview. I forget what you said, but, what other tools have you observed specifically from you and your women colleagues that you see as truly valid in the field?
I think naturally women are inherently more empathetic. So that's number one, first and foremost. I've always noticed that when a woman shows up on scene, she starts to feel. And that's not just feeling for the people we're in contact with, we're feeling for our coworkers too. And we kind of don't even know we're doing it. So I think that that's a huge, huge benefit to knowing litany of things. Number one, that in that moment, what is it that we're going to help out with the most? But then also after the fact, especially with coworkers, many a time I've sat down with my male counterparts and said, it's okay to cry. That was messed up, and have give them that safe space. So I think that that's a huge benefit. Having that sense of calm on scene is pretty common. Being able to reason between emotions and things that are going on. I've had that happen many, many times where men's, the way that their brains work because they're in their boxes and we're in our spaghetti noodles, that I'm seeing 10 steps ahead because I have all of this other information and I've had to rein my male counterpart in and not as, and then like, I know more than you, but in a, hey, I've already processed this information faster than you have. So being able to bring that reason to come to a safer and more legally and physically safer conclusion because of the way that we're processing all the information that we're getting. I've been very fortunate and very proud of some of the cases that I have been involved in. I've had, again, many a time that I've had my partners call me and say, hey, I need you on this call. I need you here taking care of this. And not just for something as, with an interview skill or dealing with a child. It's because they understand and recognize the way that I can manage evidence or the way that I can manage a scene while they're taking care of the piece of information and investigation that they know that they can take. So if you're in an environment, you have sound supervisors who build that trust with your partners that is going to kind of inherently bring out the benefits of a woman to that environment.
So why aren't we encouraging more, girls to get involved in law enforcement? I mean, I'm curious if any of your departments that you've worked with have had, kind of, I know you guys take on different community projects. Have you done any advocacy work for girls and women, trying to get them into law enforcement?
I specifically have not. My take on that is on a case-by-case basis in those community environments, there is always positive language. I don't think that there's ever a time that there's discouragement. I think it's more about the active steps to get that information out there about if someone wants to pursue law enforcement, events such as these, so that, if we have women in the room who are hearing it can take that information to someone who wants to pursue that or where to start asking those questions. I think it's hard on, the department to department level because everyone is, again, their own little microcosm. We kind of have interagency assist and we all know each other's, dispatch numbers, but there's the rarity is like the big, large community events where we have that presence out there of we as all of the agencies in this county, this is our push. So, I mean, for example, we have a neighboring department to my department that is involved in 30 by 30, but my department is not. So, you know, there's a large agency up north that is also involved in 30 by 30. And so coming here and educating myself a little bit about the local agencies that are involved in this initiative, it's also fascinating to see even that disconnect as we have this great organization that's putting this information out there, but it's still not universal.
So Tanya or Rita, I'm curious if you're doing any advocacy work in schools. You know, are you just starting in police academies, or I mean, what I'm trying to ask is, you know, we need to start encouraging, you know, girls when they're younger. I mean, we don't want all girls to become police officers, but, you know, obviously it's like we should be making it a pathway for them, saying, you know, that this is something that women excel in, you know, so give them the encouragement to, you know, to go to follow it. So I'm just curious if you guys do any advocacy work in, you know, education, you know, K through 12, basically.
Sure. So we ourselves don't do that advocacy, but we do encourage our, you know, nearly 400 agencies to do that. And there's a number that have either mentoring programs or pipeline programs with high school students or universities in their jurisdiction that advocate and try and expand those pipelines so women become more aware of what the opportunities are with respect to law enforcement. And it's a tough job. It's not for everyone. So we do have that as well. And then we've recently had conversations with a couple of academic institutions, educational institutions, trying to bring more awareness to 30 by 30 more broadly. Rita, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think you covered like our recent conversations, but I think it's definitely something for us to think about and continue to push since we have access to so many agencies. I think we're just dealing with so many of the other aspects, but I think that looking towards speaking to young people would be a really good idea.
Well, you hit on an important topic too. You know, this is a hard job. You know, are there any rewards that come with it? You know, it's like, okay, this is a job that women are good at. You know, obviously, I mean, you know, I'm sure there are challenges, but is it rewarding? You know, is it something that we can say this is a great career path or not? You know, what do you think? And if not, how can we make it something that is rewarding? I mean, obviously, we don't want to envision a world where, you know, it's like we have so much crime that, you know, we'll never get, you know, we need police 24. I mean, all I'm saying is, you know, we do need law enforcement, but, you know, is this rewarding? You know, is this something that you would be like, yeah, this is a good career path?
100%. I think if you hear someone who's, I mean, whether men, women, anything, if you hear someone who is wanting to get into law enforcement, that is what I call that little fire inside. No different than when someone signs up for the military, or if they find that spark of, I want to be an artist or a musician. If someone is expressing that, that's that little spark that is getting started. 100%, this career is very rewarding. If you find your place and you find that way to be successful is very unique. It's different in rewards than, you know, an office or you know, teaching job or something of that sort. But it is satisfying to know that you have done the job and you've done it well, and then been taking pride in that. I am very thankful that I've gotten into this career. Like I said, I've had several cases that I've been involved in whose names and outcomes are forever burned in my memory, and that's a step that I've taken for myself because I don't want to walk away from that and just say, oh, that was that cool case. I mean, that was a person. And so I make sure to know that that's the work that I've done and proud of being in doing that. And then I take those lessons and I teach those to others. I did have the fortunate opportunity to be a what we call a field training officer. So that means that when someone goes through a hiring process and then you get put in a car for about 12-week period to be trained. And so I was training people on how to be officers and having that opportunity to impart that wisdom and to start their career as well. So if you get into the right department, then this career can take you for years and decades. What I would say is if you have someone who's wanting to get into law enforcement, tell them to make sure to educate themselves. Like I said, look up that information about what are the hiring requirements for that particular department. That'll tell you a lot. If it's well worded, if it's succinct, if it's thorough, you have no questions about what's going to occur, that speaks to that department's infrastructure, because that's what the command staff is communicating. In addition to, we have civilians who fulfill that role as well. So there's no breakdown of communication. Go on lots of ride-alongs. We as civilians can go on ride-alongs with departments. Go on as many as you can, even if you're, this is my dream department. I know I want to work at this place. Go to others, because you're going to see the inner workings of law enforcement and understand how the departments work as a whole, and understand for yourself, is this right? Or is there somewhere that makes more sense, and just get that information, so wherever it is you end up, you're that much more educated and ahead of the game.
Okay, so I have one last question, mostly for 30 by 30. So I'm a candidate for office, and I don't really know much about how legislators work with police departments. Do you know much about that? Do you work with legislators to change things, or do you kind of, is it? I guess I'm asking, do police departments just run themselves, basically? Like if we want changes, can we ask, elected officials to help, or is it kind of, blocked off from that? Do you know much about that?
Yes, I mean, it definitely depends on the location of the agency and where it's situated in the state. But my experience has been that, a number of agencies work closely with their state legislators. From a 30 by 30 perspective, we are nonpartisan, but one of the things that we are looking at is there state level legislation that we can impact that affect women in the workplace, especially in policing. So if you think about childcare or part-time work or standards for women in the workplace, that is something that we do get involved with at the state level, trying to push for that legislation. But as you probably know, state level legislation can be exceedingly timely and difficult to push forward. But to answer your first question, I think it depends on the agency and the jurisdiction, and how well they work with the other stakeholders and leaders in their area.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious too. Have you seen anything on the federal level being done for some of these topics?
So there was some recent legislation put forth around child care centers. I don't know where it currently stands. And then that was put forth at the federal level. At the state level, we were excited to see that Washington State just passed a bill to allow their officers to work part-time and remain in their pension system while also staying certified. So those are the sort of things that we track that might give be better opportunities for women. So when you think about some of the reasons that women don't join law enforcement or stay, one of the dominant ones that we often hear about is their caregiving status, whether that's their own children or whatever else the case may be. But we recognize that women still take on a predominant amount of childcare, and that has implications when you're doing in a paramilitary institution where you do shift work and you have less opportunities for taking time off, et cetera.
Okay, so we only have about 5 minutes left. I'm kind of curious, Lindsay, if one thing could change, in law enforcement that would be supportive for women in your experience, what would it be?
It's a tough one to answer because it's almost unrealistic, but I think a better, more universal communication for women, or knowing that we have that networking out there. Even something, coming through my experience of becoming a mom and having to navigate that, I essentially did that solo, and had to try to navigate going through having male supervisors who I thought would be sympathetic because they have kids, and not that they were nothing egregious, nothing malicious, but it was definitely not pleasant. And coming through that and thinking over the years and other conversations with other women of that disconnect of not knowing, again, from start to finish, how do I get into this? How should I prepare myself? What are the ways that I can manage starting my career and then going through your career, knowing if you had something that you weren't comfortable with, that you have that universal resource to go to, whether it's in your own agency or others, that we have that communication and that backing. Again, no different than, and again, women walking through society, is that we always fairly regularly feel like we're on an island. And this is one of those places that it's more inherent because it is a male-driven industry. So I wish there was a way that there would be better universal communication and foundation of, I don't have someone right next to me, but I know that this is the resource that I can go to ask these questions, and they will help me either manage this and or help me fight.
Well, I think that if you ever leave your department, you know what to do. You could start that as an agency or a nonprofit. I think that would be really helpful, actually. You know, so if I'm hearing you correctly, it's like, you know, so it would be specific for women. Yeah, I think that would really be helpful. So keep that in the back of your mind. If you leave your department, you need something new to do. So Tanya or Rita, do you want to wrap up with anything and tell people how they can find? I mean, you had your info up earlier, but just wrap things up here.
Yeah, if Tanya, I think we can send over our information just so you can have it and you can send it out to the people who were invited. But yeah, we those are pretty much the only ways that you can contact us. But if you have any questions or suggestions, we do have an email and we also have a website. So we can send that over to you. And yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I think, ultimately we just want the workplace to be better for everyone, but specifically for women.
Oh, and one more thing. If you know any local agencies that are interested, they can totally reach out to us and we can see if they can sign on with us. We just opened our second class. So yeah.
It will be, we have 1 minute. So I'm curious the logistics of that. Say an agency wants to sign up with you, what do you do with them? Do you just do outreach to women, or what is your process of the actual logistics of being?
So they send us an email, saying that they're interested, and then we have a letter of intent that the head of the agency usually signs on, and a series of no or low cost actions that we encourage them to take, and they report back to us in 6-month increments, and it's all focused around the demographic numbers of their agencies, and then we ask them to review their policies, strategic goals, and any number of things. But it is really a commitment to gender equity work on the part of the agency. It's not a heavy lift to join and with us. And then in return, we have a monthly newsletter, we do webinars, and we essentially have a community of practice that we encourage everyone to take part in.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being panelists, and thank you so much, Lindsay, for coming down and speaking with us. So, all right, so that wraps up that panel. I know it's been a long day. We have, so we'll take a 15-minute break. We'll have a quickie panel, and then we'll do the close swap, and we'll call it a day, okay? So 15-minute break, and enjoy yourselves again. I think this pizza is probably freezing cold by now, sorry. But if you want cheesy bread, let me know, because we do have access to cheesy bread, and it would probably be warm. And anyone, I have these little gift bags that you can come up. I'll put them up here, and anyone can come grab them. They're just little gifts. So thank you again. Thank you, Tanya and Rita, and Kelly. Kelly's an invisible person helping me with this. Kelly, I'm going to upload a video for the 15-minute break that you can play. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm temporarily not invisible, just to make sure I wanted you to know I'm here.
Okay, so it's the third one.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Women rule the world.
What we know is that men haven't done very well. So I think we should try.
well, the end of so many patriarchal societies.
It's really depressing that I can't imagine that. There would be much more compassion.
The world would be a much more equal place.
There would be less aggression and show ponying and maybe more nurturing.
I do think that women are ruling the world since ever.
I definitely think there would be more peace.
Je pense que les hommes aussi sont féministes. J'aime le féminisme qui n'est pas excluant parce que je pense que c'est nous qui éduquons nos frères, nos pères, nos fils.
It definitely would be a much kinder place.
During the Civil Rights Movement, the leadership of Black women, their organizing skill, and their drive for justice left an enduring legacy. While they didn't always stand in the spotlight or win fame, their critical work cleared a path for a generation of Black women activists. Here's a look at some of the women who inspired today's activists. Called the Queen of the Civil Rights Movement, Dorothy Height was one of the era's leading activists. She stood near the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. at the Lincoln Memorial in 1963 as he delivered the I Have a Dream speech. But she was hardly an observer. Height helped orchestrate the march and movement, often reminding the men to not underestimate their female counterparts. She protested lynchings, worked to desegregate the military, and fought for equal pay. She received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. Using her thunderous voice, Fannie Lou Hamer injected a raw emotional power into her cause for equal rights, even when it put her own life in danger. Hamer is best known for saying she was sick and tired of being sick and tired of the abuse that Black Americans suffered in the segregated South. So she worked for change, registering voters, organizing campaigns, and would often sing to lift the spirits of her fellow activists in trying times. In 1964, Hamer led a push to integrate the all-white Mississippi delegation at the Democratic National Convention, an effort that led to integration in 1968. Ella Baker was called Fundi, a Swahili word meaning someone who hands a craft down to the next generation, for her focus on young people. After Black college students held a sit-in at a Woolworth's in Greensboro, North Carolina, she left her post at King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference. She wanted to organize the students and help them launch the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee to give youth a voice in the movement. Baker was the force behind its focus on voter registration and nonviolence. The widow of slain civil rights activist Medgar Evers, Murray Evers Williams spent decades working to ensure he wasn't forgotten. Evers Williams and Evers met in college and later founded and ran the Mississippi State chapter of the NAACP. Evers was assassinated outside his home in 1963. Evers Williams continued her work and rose to become the national chairwoman of the NAACP. She is credited with putting the organization back on solid financial footing. It took 31 years for her to see the white supremacist who killed her husband found guilty. Diane Nash believed in the power of nonviolence and put it into practice. Joining other Fisk University students, Nash peacefully protested to desegregate lunch counters in Nashville. She'd go on to organize numerous campaigns. Among them was the Freedom Riders, activists who traveled through the South to desegregate bus travel. Nash in 2011 told students that the lesson from the Freedom Rides was to take the country's future into your own hands and not leave it to public officials.
Power is knowing who you are, what you have to say, and using your voice as a tool in the world. I think no matter where you sit in that world. And I don't think that power is given to you. I think that you're born with power, and I think that our job is to unlock it.
Power for me is really about being able to take people on a journey and reach an outcome. You can have people as CEO who are not effective, and when you get underneath, it's often because they weren't able to bring people along the journey, translate the vision, and bring them together to execute to get to an outcome.
I think there's a lot of power in understanding why you're doing something. And I'm not the first to say that. I have to give props to Oprah, that's what I learned. But there's a lot of power in knowing your intent and knowing your why.
You have to don a suit of armor because you're going into the ring, and they will try to minimize every accomplishment that you have. And I always say to people, know your power.
Power is living your life on your own terms, how you want to, in a way that you feel good about.
it's a short period of time we're here. There's a lot of good things to do. I really try to think more about the things I said yes to and making the most of them than spend any time on the no things, you know, the things that passed, or I should have done that, or I didn't do that, and just focus on the things that I do have and the things that I have an opportunity to make something with. And that feels really powerful.
For me, power is much more about just this inherent feeling that you are worthy and entitled to the things that your work and efforts bring to you. And in that sense, I certainly feel powerful.
Power is having a platform and a voice, and being able to inspire and influence and also create change.
I think it's how you touch people's lives. So for me, being a leader is how do you really make an impact on whatever you choose to do. It can be an industry, it can be a person, one single person, but do something meaningful. Not just for the sake of a certain outcome, for the sake of doing something that would make someone happy, have a great impact.
Ada Lovelace. This name matters because it's the name of the first person to ever write a computer program. She didn't write it in the 70s. She didn't write it in the 60s. Because Ada Lovelace wrote the first computer program in the 40s, the 1840s. 130 years before the first personal computer was ever put on sale. Ada was born in 1815 to aristocrat Lady Annabel and the poet Lord Byron. The infamous poet would abandon her and her mother only 1 month after Ada was born. Afraid her daughter would inherit her father's ways, Ada's mother raised her with a near-obsessive focus on mathematics and science, and was quick to shun away the arts. Ada's upbringing, though unusual, meant by the time she was a young woman, she was already considered to be a mathematical genius. Ada now needed a mentor, but found many were skeptical of a woman in mathematics. But she persisted, and eventually began working with world-renowned mathematician and inventor, Charles Babbage. The two would focus their work on Babbage's conceived analytical engine, an early kind of calculator. When it came time for the two to publish their work, Ada opted to write the paper's supporting notes, a task made more difficult since the best library in the area didn't allow women. But she didn't let that stop her, and when she completed the notes, they would come as a surprise. Not only were they 3 times longer than the paper itself, but buried within them, Ada did what Babbage couldn't. She took his analytical engine and figured out how to make it work. Babbage may have designed the machine, but Ada wrote its language. And today, that language is regarded as the first computer program in the world. But somehow more incredible still, while everyone was convinced this machine could only be a calculator, Ada saw something more. She saw what it could really do. She predicted a machine like this could be used to create graphics, aid in scientific research, and even compose music.
Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to make music on a computer.
And so she comes up with the concept of a general purpose computer by connecting the notion of sort of the humanities and art to science and technology.
We're huge Ada Lovelace fans at Colbert Report.
And she made all these predictions nearly 200 years ago. Ada's life is a testament to the fact that not only can women be the catalyst to seismic shifts in technology, but that they always have been.
I don't know if they want to see. They do. It's super informative.
Okay, Kelly, we'll get back to here. So it will be just an in-person presentation. So for our last presentation, we'll be wrapping this up. I know it's been a long day for me too, obviously, but these women will be presenting on beauty industry pollution and fast fashion. So go ahead.
Hi, everyone.
Introduce yourselves.
Okay. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you. Thanks to Katrina for giving me this opportunity to talk about something I'm extremely passionate about and what I feel is a critical topic among all these amazing and empowering individuals today. My name is Maisie Heidman. I'm new to Colorado Springs. I've been here about a year and a half. I'm a licensed cosmetologist since 2008, and I've been behind the chair the entire time. And I also own a salon in Oklahoma City since 2018. So diving deep into the realm of women's history, environmental activism, and social justice, I'm reminded of the profound impact each of us can have when we unite under a common cause. Sorry. I'm here today not only as an advocate for environmental sustainability, but also as a passionate voice for inclusivity and equity within the beauty industry. Today, I want to share with you the interconnectedness of beauty industry, sustainability, and social responsibility. Imagine for a moment 421,000 pounds of usable materials being thrown into landfills every single day, originating solely from the beauty industry alone. Cardboard, hair foils, paper, hair clippings, plastic, and so many other things. There's a little visual right here of some of that stuff. This staggering number amounts to 877 pounds per minute. That's from the beauty industry alone. Honestly, I can't even imagine what that looks like, 877 pounds a minute. That's insane. There's truly not enough time in the day to explain all the negative effects of the beauty industry and what we could do better.
Hey guys in the back, can you lower your voices just a bit? We can't hear our speakers. Thank you. Thank you.
In our pursuit of beauty and self-care, we are inadvertently contributing to a monumental ecological crisis. But that's not all. Recent studies show an even scarier truth. Through its production processes and distribution channels, the beauty industry emits over 18 million tons of greenhouse gases every single year. You've heard of big pharma, but have you heard of big beauty? We're not just talking about lipstick tubes and mascara wands. We're talking about a substantial contributor to climate change, exacerbating the very crisis that threatens the future of our planet and generations to come. Let's dive into many ways the beauty industry contributes to environmental degradation. First, let's address the elephant in the room, plastic packaging. We all know that's a problem. Walk into any cosmetic store and you'll be greeted by rows upon rows of brightly colored bottles, jars, and tubes, each meticulously designed to catch your eye. However, what often goes unnoticed is the sheer volume of plastic waste generated by these products. From shampoo bottles to lipstick tubes, the beauty industry is a major contributor to the global plastics crisis. According to recent estimates, nearly 120 billion units of packaging are produced every year by the beauty industry alone. A shockingly insignificant portion of this packaging ends up in landfills or polluting our oceans, taking literal centuries to decompose and wreaking havoc on marine life in the process. But unfortunately, it doesn't stop there. Chemical pollution is another pressing concern. Many of the personal care products that we use today contain a cocktail of synthetic chemicals, preservatives, and additives, which each with its own environmental footprint. Sorry, it's so doom and gloom. I'll come with solutions in a minute. Take, for instance, microbeads. We've all experienced them. They're tiny plastic particles often found in exfoliating scrubs and toothpaste, and they might seem harmless at first, but they pose a grave threat to aquatic ecosystems as they can be ingested by marine life and accumulated in the food chain, leading to widespread contamination and ecological disruption. It's hard enough to find food that's healthy these days, but to know that the beauty industry is directly contributing to contamination of our food is honestly mind-blowing and makes me want to quit my job. Moreover, let's not overlook the staggering water usage associated with beauty product manufacturing. The production of cosmetics and personal care items require vast quantities of water at various stages, from ingredient cultivation to product formulation and packaging. To put this into perspective, it takes around 140 liters of water to produce a single bottle of shampoo. Now multiply that by millions of bottles produced annually, and you can begin to grasp the enormity of water footprint of the beauty industry. In essence, the beauty industry's environmental impact extends far beyond skin deep. It permeates every facet of our ecosystem, from our oceans and waterways to our soil and air. As conscientious consumers and advocates for sustainability, it is imperative that we confront these realities head-on and demand accountability from our beauty industry. We have to hold them accountable. Only through collective action and systematic change can we hope to mitigate the environmental damage brought on by our beauty rituals and pave the way for a more sustainable future. Now you might be wondering, how does this tie into a broader narrative for women's history and empowerment? Well, the beauty industry is deeply intertwined with our societal constructs of femininity, beauty standards, and self-worth. It affects us all, regardless of our gender, our race, or creed. Let's dive deeper into that intersectionality of this issue. Communities of color, particularly women, bear a disproportionate burden when it comes to harmful effects of personal care products. They are not only targeted by aggressive marketing tactics, but also exposed to countless toxic chemicals lurking in these products, from skin lightening creams to hair straighteners ridden with harmful chemicals such as mercury, formaldehyde, and asbestos, which are not yet regulated in our beauty industry, and they are in the construction material industry. And they know this, and they're making money off of making us sick. The beauty industry perpetuates harmful stereotypes and jeopardizes the health of marginalized communities. As we reflect on the environmental impact of the beauty industry, it's crucial to recognize that the burden of this impact is not carried equally by all. Marginalized communities, particularly of color, often face disproportionate exposure to harmful chemicals and toxins in personal care products, exacerbating existing inequalities in health and well-being. In light of this reality, I urge you to become advocates for policies that promote environmental justice and equitable access to safe and non-toxic personal care products. This means advocating for regulations that provide the health and safety of all consumers, regardless of their race or socioeconomic status. We must demand transparency from beauty companies regarding the ingredients used in their products, ensuring that consumers have access to information about potential health risks. Additionally, we must push for policies that incentivize the development and use of safer alternatives, reducing the prevalence of harmful chemicals in personal care items. Furthermore, we must address the systematic barriers that prevent marginalized communities from accessing safe and non-toxic beauty products. This includes advocating for policies that promote affordability and availability to these products in underserved communities, ensuring that everyone has the right to make informed choices about their personal care routines. Ultimately, advocating for these policies that promote environmental justice and equitable access to safe personal care products is not just a matter of protecting the environment, it's a matter of justice and equity. And by raising our voices and demanding change, we can work towards a future where everyone has access to beauty products that enhance their well-being without compromising their health or the health of our planet. Together, let's champion these policies that prioritize environmental justice and ensure that no one is left behind in the pursuit of a healthier, more sustainable beauty industry. As I know, hearing all of this information can be extremely overwhelming, and you might be thinking, what can I do? As we confront the environmental impact of the beauty industry, it's crucial to offer tangible solutions alongside of highlighting the problems. Where do we go from here? How do we balance our desire for self-expression and self-care with our responsibility to protect the planet and our well-being? The path forward lies in collective action and conscious consumerism. Firstly, we must demand accountability from the beauty industry. We cannot continue to ignore these harmful practices. Transparency, sustainable sourcing, and ethical production must become the new standard, not just marketing buzzwords. Secondly, let's empower ourselves with knowledge. Educating ourselves about the ingredients in personal care products is essential, and we can advocate for safer alternatives and support brands prioritizing sustainability and inclusivity. I'm almost done, I promise. Moreover, let's embrace practical solutions in our daily lives. Local refilleries offer sustainable alternatives to single-use plastic waste. By opting for refillable containers, we not only reduce our environmental footprint, but also support businesses committed to sustainability. Consumer choice holds immense power. I'm sure you've heard the term voting with your dollar. It really matters. And by supporting brands that prioritize sustainability and transparency, we send a clear message about the importance of eco-friendly practices. Researching a brand's environmental credentials before purchasing can make a significant difference. Additionally, supporting eco-friendly salons is vital. These establishments lead the way in minimizing environmental impact and using sustainable, low-toxic hair curling products to implementing water conservation practices. Lastly, education and advocacy are key. Spreading awareness about the environmental impact of the beauty industry through social media, community workshops, and grassroots activism can catalyze change. In conclusion, by embracing refillable containers, supporting sustainable brands and salons, and advocating for change, we can support a future where beauty and environmental responsibility coexist harmoniously. Let us remember that the fight for gender equality and environmental justice are intertwined, and together we can redefine the beauty standards, reshape industries, and pave a way for a brighter, more sustainable tomorrow.
All right, can everybody hear me? All right, my name is Jocelyn Redfern. I own a shop locally, and I'm here to talk about fast fashion, basically. And what is fast fashion? Well, it's kind of everything, actually, at this point. So I have a lot of facts and figures as well, and they're not any more fun than Macy's. They might be less fun, but we'll get through it. So it's actually nice to be doing this near a bookstore because it gives us a little perspective on history when you think back to how clothes are entwined with our everyday lives. Like those of you who read fantasy, you're really familiar with the kings and queens and their finery, and then there's always a scrappy poor hero and his rough spun clothing. And for history, that was really a very, very palpable symbol of wealth. Clothing was a tangible resource. It takes immense skill to put fibers together, to spin them, to weave them into cloth. And sewing and the production of textiles has been a part of our lives, especially as women, for eons. It was a valuable, valuable skill. I mean, even just in recent times, if you think Danielle Steele made an entire career writing books that were just outfit descriptions and software porn. This is an important thing in our culture, but it's gone through a lot of change. Data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics shows that in 1901, the average U.S. household allocated 14% of their total spending for clothing. That's 14% of the entire household had to be spent on clothing. By 2002, spending shares has decreased to 4%. So we are actually spending much less on clothing than we used to, and we're buying much, much more of it. Businesses have aggressively cut their costs and streamlined their supply chains. Most of you realize that almost nothing is made here. Nothing is made in this country. And that's for a reason. We have strict labor laws, and you can't make clothing cheaply under strict labor laws because you're required to pay people. And that's not a good way to make profits. This has caused the price of clothing to fall dramatically compared to other household goods. According to Fashion United, which is an industry data conglomerate, fashion consumers buy over 80 billion new pieces of clothing every year. That's over 400% of what we consumed at the turn of the millennium. The Clean Clothes Campaign reports that the number of garments purchased per capita just between 2000 and 2014 increased about 60%. And since 2014, it's continued to explode. We don't really have that many new figures, especially for this country, because there is no regulation. There's no overseeing body. Most of what we have is self-reported. We are meeting demand, though. The Textile Exchange reports that global fiber production per person has increased from 8 kilograms per person in 1975, that's when I was born, to over 14 kilograms per person in 2021. So that's almost double per person just in my lifetime. And that doesn't really tell the whole story, how many fibers we're making. Due to decreasing standards of how things are made, we actually use less cloth per garment than we used to. So actually, we're making an incredible amount. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation reports that the number of garments produced annually has doubled from 50 billion units in 2000 to over 100 billion units produced in 2015. That was almost 10 years ago. That was before Shein. That was before Temu. There's no estimates for now, but it's kind of horrifying. At this point, we have enough garments on Earth to clothe the next 6 generations, even with projected population growth. That's what already exists. So the fact is that globalization means that there's no regulating agency, there's no reporting agency. The Fashion Transparency Index in 2023, they're a consumer watchdog group, they found that 88% of major fashion brands do not disclose their production volumes. So we don't know what they're producing or how much. We do know that it's more than we need. And they project that by 2030, it's projected to rise by 63%, up to over 102 million tons, which is the equivalent of more than 500 billion t-shirts. We don't need 500 billion t-shirts for 8 billion people. The garment industry is the world's 3rd biggest manufacturing industry after the automotive and technology industries. According to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, they generated $1.3 trillion in 2017. If we rank the fashion industry alongside individual countries' gross domestic production, the GDP, the global fashion industry would represent the 7th largest economy in the world. So that's from the McKinsey State of Fashion report. So garment production takes people. It's one of the world's most labor-intensive manufacturing industries. They estimate that there are directly involved about 25 to 60 million people, but that's just what's hands-on. Those are people actually cutting and sewing. Once you factor in workers handling textiles, design, retail, shipping, other involved things, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation estimates over 300 million people are employed along the value chain of the garment industry. And unfortunately, almost all of that is taking place in the global south and the global east, not where it's being bought. The loss of understanding of how clothing is made has really led us to be disconnected from the idea of how clothing is made and what it is a quality good. Instead of a necessary household skill, it's been devalued. Part of the consequences of women in the West moving further away from domestic duties is we've relegated the idea of sewing. Instead of saying, oh, well, men also need to participate, this is important for everyone, we've really become content with allowing women in other countries to take up the burden. And since we don't see it, we don't have to care. We've actually even started to look down on these ancestral skills. And some of us think that clothing manufacturers become automated. A lot of people think in their head, oh, well, it's machines. But due to the nature of clothing and cloth, that's impossible. You cannot automate clothing. Every piece of clothing that's made is handmade. Hands have to touch it. There's a few processes like bolt cutting where a machine can cut out a lot of pieces. But even with that, someone has to be putting it in. Someone has to be sewing. There's a human being involved at every single stage of making their clothes. And these people are not treated well. The modern fashion industry depends on the unequal power relationships and the invisible availability of female manual work. About 80% of garment workers worldwide are women and are routinely paid less than their male counterparts. And the brands involved absolutely know that this is happening. The Fashion Checker is an international fashion industry watchdog. They surveyed fashion brands, and 93% of those surveyed brands admit that they are not paying a living wage. And keep in mind, we're not talking about a living wage in the US or the UK. We're talking about a living wage in the countries where these are being made. For example, in Bangladesh, living wage is only about $2 a day, and they are not paying that. They refuse to pay it. The actually Clean Clothes campaign found when they surveyed garment workers, along with the Garment Workers Organization, those numbers are closer to 98% of garment workers reporting being paid below a living wage. The lack of oversight means that along with extreme poverty, workers are stuck working long hours under extremely unsafe conditions using dangerous equipment with no protection from chemicals or fibers in the air. A 2016 report by the UK House of Commons, which was researching corporate leadership on modern slavery, found that out of 71 leading retailers in the UK, 77% believe there was a very high likelihood of modern slavery occurring at some stage in their own production. They know that it's happening, they're aware, and there's nothing they're doing. Unfortunately, I have no data on this in the United States, because the United States companies absolutely refuse. So I only have data from the UK. And it's not really nice to think about, but we in the West are directly responsible for this. Our constant need for new clothing, for new styles, and our demand for cheap prices has led to what's happening. It's a direct result. We're buying it. Women in other countries, millions and millions of women around the world, are being exploited every day so that our Instagram looks really fresh. And our obsession with trends, our need for retail therapy is taking a direct toll on our sisters in other countries. And it's very, very easy for us to not think about it. But the reality is, every single person in this room is wearing something that was produced by slave labor. At best, poverty level wages. At worst, actual forced slave labor. And all of us are wearing it. That's really what is available. There's no such thing as being exempt. Even luxury brands are using the same factories. So, as well as human cost, as well as the human toll, it's also taking a really, really sharp toll on our environment. The House of Commons also found that textile production contributes more to climate change than international aviation and shipping industries both combined. According to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the textiles industry relies mostly on non-renewable resources, using 98 million tons in total per year. That's including synthetic fibers made out of oil, fertilizers to grow cotton, chemicals to produce dye and finish fabrics and textiles. Annually, 43 million tons of chemicals are used in the production of textiles. That's a lot of chemicals. They also found that producing plastic-based fibers for textiles uses over 340 million barrels of oil every year. That's a lot of oil-based clothing. Chances are a lot of what you're wearing right now is made out of fossil fuels. Now, at a point where it seems like clothing is so easily available and being produced on a mass scale, it seems like we would all be dressed in luxury. But the truth is, most of us are wearing actual garbage most of the time. So the Textile Exchange tells us that synthetic fibers have dominated the fiber market since the mid-1900s, when they began to surpass cotton as the main textile. Currently, polyester alone, and there's many, many other synthetic fibers, but we'll stick with polyester, it's what most people know, has a current estimated market share of around 50 to 60% of total global fiber production. Approximately 60.5 million tons of polyester were produced in 2021. And why is this being used? Is it because like polyester is better? Is it warmer? No, it's because it's cheaper and because fossil fuel companies subsidize and are subsidized by the government in order to continue producing more of these fibers. It's also a lot more automated than natural fibers. When you have natural fibers, you have fields, you have agriculture, you have things where you have actual people a lot of polyester production can be automated, and so it is rising every year. Over time, the quantity of polyester has increased gradually, so at this point, most people don't realize the difference. In the 80s, a t-shirt would cost an average of $20. It's closer to 50 today. And it would be 100% cotton. Now your average t-shirt costs less than $5, and it will be at least 40 to 50% synthetic if it contains cotton at all. And we've gotten used to this. There's a reason why vintage t-shirts are so, pricey and hard to find if you're looking in shops and on eBay. They last a long time, and they're well made, but it's just not that way anymore. You can see the little pills that build up on the surface of your clothing. We've accepted that as a normal part of fabric wear. That's purely from polyester. That's not a natural thing that happens to clothes. That just indicates that you have synthetics mixed in with their natural fibers, and they're fighting and making little pills. It's kind of gross. Most of us have a feeling that everything in the stores has gotten worse, but we don't really know why. Since we don't engage with our clothing anymore, we don't know the difference between a sewn seam or a serged seam. We don't really understand the difference between a woven fabric or a knit fabric. We don't really even know what we're looking for. So even if we genuinely want to look for stuff that's high quality, we want to look for stuff that's going to last for a long time, we're generations removed from that knowledge. Most of us, like in my generation, in the 70s, 80s, we're still learning to sew. But I think we might have been the last generation, because home economics doesn't really exist anymore. So we don't really have an understanding of what it is to have a well-made garment, even though most of us, I think, would like to. We would like to actually invest in something that's going to last. But it's almost impossible to find. Anyway, the Changing Markets Foundation reported that synthetic fibers now represent over 2/3 of textiles being produced, requiring more oil than the whole annual consumption of Spain. And this percentage is predicted to rise to 73% by 2030. Out of a survey of 55 fashion brands done by the Changing Markets Foundation, 14 of them, which is 25%, have increased their use of synthetics, both in terms of percentage and total volume. So as we charge deeper into a rapidly accelerating climate emergency, with many other industries scrambling to decarbonize and try to mitigate, the fashion sector's largest companies are reporting an ever heavier reliance on fossil fuel. And they are actually trying to, play it off as, well, it's recyclable. But we'll talk about that in a minute. The Swedish Chemicals Agency found that in 2015, greenhouse gas emissions produced a total of 1.2 billion tons of carbon dioxide. That's more than all international flights and maritime shipping combined. Also, in that same report in 2016, they were looking at the chemical substances identified as used in textile manufacturing. They identified over 3,500 chemical substances, and out of those, over 1,000 of them, nearly 30%, were listed as confidential to manufacturing and would not be disclosed for analysis. So of the remaining 2,400 chemicals used in clothing that they analyzed, approximately 30% were identified as posing a risk to human health. This means definite harm to the people doing the clothes and potential harm to the people wearing them. We don't really know the long-term effects of petroleum-based clothing. It's been too recent, there haven't been studies done. We do know that our skin is the largest organ and it interacts with our clothing all day long. And we're going to probably find out more about that in the future. But as of right now, we really don't know what it's doing to us. People are very careful. Oh, yeah, sure. So even natural textiles still cause environmental harm. The World Bank estimates that 20% of industrial water pollution globally is because of the dyeing and treatment of textiles. So we are making clothing at an exponentially larger volume, and just the process of making the clothing is causing harm to the earth. And because so many of these clothing are made so cheaply, they cannot last, so they go directly to landfill. Instead of building up a wardrobe of well-made pieces that will last, that we mend, that we hand on down to people, we really segued into a process of buying something for the moment and then discarding it. We buy something for the moment and then we get rid of it. Among the average European apparel companies, the number of clothing collections is doubled. So they're just pumping out more and more collections every year. more new things, more things that we want. And the only solution really for us is to stop buying it. That's simply all there is. There's no way around it. We have to just stop buying new clothes. And that's it. I mean, luckily, there's secondhand clothes available everywhere. It's a very, very sustainable way. You go ahead and buy secondhand clothes. You can swap like we're about to do with your friends. And instead of spending time for that retail hit of like buying something and getting enjoyment for that, we can start to focus our energy on finding brands and finding things which actually are made here, made sustainably, made of natural fibers. Maybe invest our energies and time into that rather than finding the right color or finding whatever's going to look best. But a lot of this has to be done by us because we're the ones involved at the end of the chain. We are the eventual consumer. And so I hate to say it, there's really no way to buy new clothes anymore without causing harm. It just doesn't work, even in the luxury sector. But there are things we can do. And so I guess we're going to. We're going to go upstairs in a minute and swap clothes, and I hope everybody finds something good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. So that, I just want to wrap up too, if you find a really good brand and, they're using high quality materials, obviously it's going to cost you more, but it's going to last you a lot longer. So I have a local business owner here who wants to share some samples and share about her product before we head upstairs. So just going to take a minute. And yeah, so he has the samples, I'm guessing.
Yep, that's fine. Hello, everyone. I'm Ivy Christensen, the founder of EcoSuds Laundry Detergent, a small local business dedicated to fostering sustainability and catalyzing positive environmental change in our community and beyond. The genesis of my foray into eco-friendly products was ignited by a profound realization of the immense impact our daily choices have on our planet's health. This awakening propelled me on a personal mission to craft a product range that not only offers exceptional cleaning efficiency, but also actively contributes to lessening our collective environmental footprint. From its inception, EcoSuds has embodied a clear mission to provide consumers with a healthier and more sustainable alternative to traditional laundry detergents. Each laundry cycle presents an opportunity for us to reduce our carbon footprint and protect our precious natural resources. I am steadfast in ensuring that EcoSuds enables this essential transition towards more responsible consumption habits. However, my dedication doesn't stop there. It goes far beyond mere production development. I am entirely committed to continual improvement and innovation within our operations. I'm constantly exploring novel ways to minimize waste, conserve energy, and uphold ethical sourcing practices, because I firmly believe that every choice we make plays a pivotal role in constructing a greener, more sustainable future for all. Moreover, it's crucial to acknowledge the unsustainable practices of some competitors in the industry. Many traditional laundry detergents generate staggering amounts of plastic waste and harmful chemicals that not only pollute our environment, but also pose health risks to individuals. Studies have shown that these chemicals can irritate the skin and respiratory system, leading to various health issues. By choosing EcoSuds, consumers are not only making a sustainable choice for the planet, but also safeguarding their well-being and that of their loved ones. For me, EcoSuds transcends being merely a product. It's about nurturing a culture of sustainability, empowerment, and social responsibility. As a woman entrepreneur, I am impassioned by the profound obligation to drive significant change in both environmental conservation and the daily lives of those we touch. Thank you for affording me this opportunity to share with you today. For those interested in delving deeper into our mission or exploring potential collaborations, I invite you to check out our website, EcoSudsLaundryDetergent.com, or feel free to talk to me after the event. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for attending and participating. It's been a long day and it looks like we have more males in the audience now, so we know it's time for us to head upstairs. But yeah, so anyone who wants to participate, anyone who wants to participate in the closed swap, even if you weren't associated with the event, you're welcome to come with us. We had a group of women drop off some clothes that weren't, that couldn't be here today, so we have plenty. So yeah, just let me close this off and then I'll show you where to go. I think some of you guys already know where to go, maybe. If not, so, okay, all right, bye.
Thank you so much.
That was excellent.